Good evening. At this time, I'll call the May 22nd Board of Supervisors to order. We have with us tonight Mr. Floyd Thomas, Mr. Jeff Black, Mr. Jeff Seeley, Mr. Reggie Underwood, Clay Forhan, and I am Nancy Long. At this time, we will stand for invocation and pledge of allegiance. Mr. Black.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, as we gather here tonight, we ask for your guidance, your strength, and your knowledge to help us make the best decisions for Caroline County. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, it took me a lot of practice. Damn.
Thank you again for your patience and the delay of getting started, but we had some technical issues plus some people running late with the weather. At this time, I will open the floor for opening board comments. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Long. I have a couple. First, the good news. I want to thank Mr. Cully and Mr. Finney for their hard work in getting the county a bond rating. I know we're going to discuss that a little bit later, but for those who don't know, with the recent tax bill, we would have had to pay $1 million in interest on the school bond we had. And instead of just passing that along to citizens, they traveled to New York and presented a case for us to good rating and possibly save that $1 million. On the power outage front, thank you to Dominion for their quick service. I know it was quite an issue. The Sheriff's Office, Fire and Rescue, and people that I personally talked to when the county was closed, like Chief Loftus and Kevin Whiteman. And we need to somehow through the county advertise a little more. We used to have a medical conditions alert, folks that went without power. They were on a list and Fire and Rescue could do some things to help them out. So we may want to try to activate that again or either do that through the Caroline Alert System. But I was without power for 29 hours and it was fun for a little while, and I can imagine what it was like for folks with a medical condition who needed service. So the county would help. I put that out on my Facebook and Twitter accounts, but we need to make sure we do that a little more. On a sad note, of course, we are again mourning high school students who were needlessly and senselessly killed in Santa Fe High School in Texas. And although there's little we can do on a local level, we have tried to ensure by getting more school resource officers and would hope the schools would look at school security officers to kind of augment that as well. And the last one is I see Mr. Nelson and I spoke to Mr. Nelson on yesterday after sending him an email. We have debated and discussed the benefits of flashing yellow lights, and there was a 20-year-old girl, a student at Germanna, who was actually killed last week while trying to make a left turn at a flashing yellow light. And Mr. Nelson and I went through as much discussion as we could during his off day. But again, I intend to send a letter to the proper authorities at VDOT stating my displeasure in that, and especially in the locations that are proposed in the Mattaponi district along 207, making an accident when cars are coming towards you at 50, 55 miles an hour is without a doubt deadly. So I would hope the rest of the board would go against the flashing yellow turn signals, but that's my intention. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple things. I want to thank the EDA and Mr. Wilson for the Business Appreciation Dinner that was held last week. It's always a great event, and so it was good to get to talk to people from the business community. I also want to reiterate what Mr. Thomas said about the bond rating. That was huge news, and it's kind of a testament of our financial health in the county. Kind of shows you sometimes you can't just in and out. You've got to be a little bit fiscally responsible with your money, and sometimes you have to say no to people who ask. I also want to congratulate the class of 2018, Caroline High School, the graduation ceremony up at Mary Washington. It was an excellent graduation ceremony, and they always do a magnificent job at the graduation, so congratulations to the class. And that's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Seeley, do you have anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, the EDA dinner was great to see the business folks out and get an opportunity to talk with all of them, or as many as you can in that amount of time. Graduation for class of 2018, congratulations, though they had to go through some trials and tribulations. There was no school that day due to flooding, so a lot of the things that took place during the day had to take place 2 hours before graduation, which made everything a little more hectic. So congratulations on them graduating and being able to overcome some of the obstacles that were presented to them. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the bond rating. It's something, the financial situation of the county is something that I've long talked about since I've come to the board. So it's been a long-term goal for me to actually get to a place where we had good financial standing and could actually get a bond rating, which I think is attributed to our whole staff and the board actually sticking to some real tough plans when there were some other easier things we could have done. So I'd like to say congratulations to the staff and the rest of the board members for sticking to a lot of the projects that we've set forth. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to do a prologue to, but certainly I agree with my fellow board members. Madam Chair, on the next meeting on June 12th, I will not be available. I'm hoping maybe we can move that meeting back a week to the 19th. If board members agree, we can take a look at it later. But if not, I certainly understand, but I will not be available. Yeah. That's the Father's Day week that I'll be available that Tuesday.
All right, Mr. Underwood, we'll add that under new business to discuss and vote on.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Forehand.
I wanted to thank Rappahannock Electric. Ladysmith Village didn't lose power throughout the events, so that was it's a great thing. Yeah, no trees, everything's underground. Also, before we meet again, we will have the dedication of the Loving Marker on June 2nd at 12:15, and we have the Memorial Day events at the courthouse on the 28th, and that's before we meet again. I'll reserve everything else for later. Thank you.
Thank you. And one good thing about going last is we've already covered just about everything. So I'll go forward a little bit and remind everyone that on Memorial Day there will be a service at 10 o'clock. The weather permits at Courthouse Green. If not, we will have someone directing a rain location, which is yet to be decided. But this year we're going to be recognizing our Vietnam veterans, and we expect a fairly good turnout and a lot of family members and a new plaque. So I hope everyone will come and support our guys. Very proud of the county for their bond rating, has been said, and of our graduates, of course. I want to thank Mr. Seeley and Mr. Black for attending the graduation, and to the school board for sending us all invitations and tickets. I opted not to go out in that weather, and so it was nice knowing that Jeff and Jeff were there to represent us. Also, please mark your calendars for June. Remember, we've got our county fair coming up this year, and it's a lot of fun. And do make time to plan to take your children or your family to see it. That is all I have at this time. So we will move forward to...
Madam Chair, did you
yes.
say what time the Memorial Day service?
10 o'clock.
Thank you.
And the loving service is at 12:15, and we'll meet here. Meet here at 11:30 and then bus over to the marker.
I'm sorry. We need to meet here at 12:15, and the program is at 1 down at the site.
All right, 12:15. Pam knows what's going on. She's got it. 12:15, and then the program will start at 1 o'clock, and there'll be
I'll
a
be here at
bus
11:30
running.
since I told people 11:30, and they'll probably be here at 12. But that's good.
Better,
thank you.
better early than late, like I tend to be, so. All right, at this time, we will move on to amendments to the agenda. We have already had one request by Mr. Underwood to add discussion of the change of our June meeting date. So if that's all right with everyone, I would say that we add that under new business, just 13B.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, that takes us down to our consent agenda, to our presentations, and our first presentation today is from Lori Myers, Regional Director, Fredericksburg Office for the Alzheimer's Association. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me tonight. This is a nice opportunity to introduce myself and the association to you all. I would just like to take a few minutes to talk about who we are and what services we have for Caroline County. Our office is in downtown Fredericksburg. It is out of the Greater Richmond chapter, but we support Caroline County along with the city of Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania County, and Westmoreland County. And we just really want people to know who we are and what we do, and possibly partner in any way possible for your community, be it an organization, a business, to offer support. So I thought maybe it might be helpful to just talk about our core services. We are a nonprofit organization. We are nationwide, but we do have a presence throughout the United States in a regional manner like myself. And our services are at no charge to families. It's a nonprofit organization, and we really are passionate about education, support, getting the word out to people that they don't have to walk the dementia journey alone. So if I could just take a few minutes, our core services, the first thing I wanted to highlight, and this gives anybody, myself, anybody in the community, we have an 800 number that's available 24/7, 7 days a week, Easter Sunday, in the middle of the night. If somebody is dealing with a scenario, whether it's Alzheimer's or any type of dementia, they can call that number. It goes to our home office, and that allows an individual to speak to somebody about the concern that they have. And that's a phone that's available anytime. We also have care consultations, and I just want the citizens to know that they can call on the phone, and we're going to meet them wherever they are with their concern. Or they could actually make an appointment in the office to come and speak to me, and we will do what we can to assist them. And again, that's at no charge to the family. We also have community education programs, going to the Rotary Club, the library, any organization that wants to know more and educate either their employees or families. We have several community programs that allow that to happen. And we also do some caregiver training within the communities themselves, the ones that provide that direct care training in a facility scenario. We do have support groups for families as well as the person with dementia, and we certainly encourage people to do the Project Lifesaver as a safety feature, but we also have one within the Alzheimer's Association. It's called Safe Return, and it is an identification bracelet should someone wander. Our statistics tell us 6 out of 10 with a dementia diagnosis might just get turned around in the car or on a walk, and identification would be crucial to keeping them safe. The last thing that we have core service-wise is just connecting people with clinical trials. You know, we're going to get that cure. We're the largest nonprofit funder of research to find that cure. But if you think about it, for all the trials that are out there, if no one's participating, it's going to take us that much longer to get that cure. So we encourage people, they can call the 800 number to find out more about what's available in their area. And they can also do an online search and actually say, this is who I am, this is where I live, and get information and feedback as to what's available within whatever radius you've identified. So we want you to know we're here. We want the citizens to know we're here, and we're willing and most anxious for any kind of partnership to provide that support. So that's what I wanted to say tonight. I don't know if there's any questions or if this would even be the format for that, but I just appreciate you all knowing more about us and also spreading the word about the support.
Thank you very much. I think we do have some questions. One,
Okay.
I want to have the 800 number.
That's what I was gonna
1-800.
ask.
Yeah, I didn't give that, did I? Talked about it and never gave it. 1-800-272-3900.
Thank you. Ms. Sealy, do you have another question?
I just know that we've had a number of neighbors in the neighborhood that I'm in that have had Alzheimer's, and I think the families just get worn out over time. Are you providing recommendations for care for folks as well? Can they call you to look for people that are actually helping give care? Because that's probably the number one issue.
Yes, so we are information and referral out. If it is a home care provider that they're looking for, we guide people towards the licensed home health agencies because of the background check and all that they provide. So that would be a list that we can provide people, some direction on who to call, and also some questions to ask when you're calling for help, because if you've done that before, how do you know what those questions might be? I know there's a lot of individual arrangements that work beautifully, but as far as what we would refer someone to, it would be a home health agency. But you're so right. The person with the diagnosis is very important, but so is that caregiver. And it is very stressful at times.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Myers.
Appreciate it.
Our next presentation is the adoption of the resolution declaring, I'm sorry, I have to skip down. The update from the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, Mr. Roberts. My glasses are streaming up.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Appreciate that. Pam, am I supposed to do something with this, or do I do it with this? Which button?
No, it's that right there.
Pam, they didn't even give me the right button. Oh, for the TV? Does anybody, well, the caps aren't on tonight, so I don't need that. Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Roberts.
Appreciate the opportunity to come and provide an update. As historically, I would prefer to make this a conversation. I do get out at least once a year and try to give you kind of an overview of our work. I'm sure Mr. Forehand keeps you apprised of some of the things that we're doing. These are our marketing metrics. You've seen this before in some different formats. Year to date, we've had one announcement, which was actually we assisted an expansion. We obtained a COF grant for that expansion. If you come across, you can see we continue to add to the pipeline. A little bit slower at this point in time than we were last year, but when we get to the marketing calendar, we were more backloaded with marketing trips in the fourth fiscal quarter. You'll also notice that we've had a drop in web sessions. We took a look at what activity we got pushing out with Google AdWords, which we were spending about $15,000 a year on. As I mentioned in another report, in another county, we stopped using the AdWords because we were trying to figure out a better way to deploy those funds. Because we were getting a lot of calls. As you all know, transportation and logistics are an important cluster for the region and an important cluster for you all. The problem was we were getting all the complaint calls for FedEx and UPS. I was trying to explain to somebody on Christmas Eve that we weren't the people that broke it to China, that he had bought his wife for the next day, and get him to the right place. So we decided to drop the AdWords, and we're going to redeploy those funds probably into sprucing up the website. We have 21 new projects so far this year we've been working on. Caroline has had an opportunity to respond to 16 of those. Of those 21, 14 were direct to us, and 7 came through VEDP. We continue to grow the number of private sector investors. If this went back to 2015, we had 25 private sector investors. So we've added a net 20 new private sector investors in the last 2.5 years. We don't have any data comps prior to 2014, so I can't go back before and tell you what the CapEx or the number of jobs were at that point. This is our marketing calendar for the year. As I mentioned earlier, it's a little more backloaded. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this because we're coming to the end of it. Would make two very quick points. The VEDP update that we had in January was very successful. It was one of the better familiarization tours that we've done. There were actually 26 people from VEDP who participated, and of those 26, 18 of them had been at VEDP less than a year. And that speaks a lot to sort of the restructuring that they've actually gone through. Data center world in San Antonio was interesting, and we've actually got about 4 or 5 prospects out of that. We did not go there to pitch data center developers. They were not in attendance. These are the suppliers into data centers. So businesses like Mr. Fourhands were represented at this conference. That's where we really have a competitive advantage when competing with Northern Virginia. Is a lower cost of doing business, lower cost of labor, lower cost of land to work with the supply industry into that business. I wanted to share this with you pretty quickly. On the left-hand side, this came from a presentation we saw from the Brookings Institute. On the left is historically sort of how much time economic development organizations spent on business recruitment and then on everything else that they do, primarily administratively. So they were spending 85 to 90% of their time on business attraction. They put up a chart that showed how it was evolving, which showed more of it breaking down in thirds. What we did is we took what they had and then applied it to how much time we spend on it. We still spend about 60% of our time on business attraction. But in the left-hand upper side, you'll see more time being spent on innovation and entrepreneurship. We've been working on a tech transfer initiative over at Dahlgren. We have about 10 business-to-business arrangements that we've been working on between international defense contractors and defense contractors within the region, and we've actually been assisting a couple of startups, which is very new for us. Over on the right-hand side is strength capacity or capacity building. We are still working on a transformation initiative, and I'll mention this a little bit later. Business-ready sites, we did complete the final initial business-ready site audit for sort of an aggregation of land, about 400 acres up next to the Stafford Airport, and that was the last one of the ones that we were funding 75% of. And then we continued our partnership with the University of Mary Washington and with the Chamber on the Center for Business Research. And we've expanded a little bit of what we're doing in foreign direct investment. This year we did have direct calls into both Toronto and to Montreal, as well as to CANSAC, which is the Canadian National Security Conference. A little bit more on capacity building and somewhat specifically to Caroline. We did complete a Phase 2 grant administration for a wetlands delineation study of the Oryx Sims property that straddles the Spotsylvania-Caroline line. That was completed back in February and delivered by Bowman. Not knowing exactly where we were going with that property, there is legislation on the books that allows for a regional industrial facility agreement between multiple localities. The law currently states 3 or more localities, but planning districts have been going in for a number of years and exempting themselves from that. We actually went and worked with our trade association, with Virginia Economic Developers Association, and got that changed to where it only takes 2 or more jurisdictions to enter into an agreement. I did want to mention to you that of the 400 or so sites on Virginia Scan, the state database, in the whole state, there are only 23 certified business-ready sites of 100 acres or more. It shows a sort of a woeful inventory that we have, and in our region, we don't have any certified sites, and we only have 2 that are really pad-ready. We have worked very closely with a restructuring strategic plan at VEDP. We were one of 7 regional economic development organizations that were asked to participate in that. And then Speaker Howell, I don't know what I did to him on his way out of office, but he appointed me to the Business and Marketing Development Committee that was called for in the legislation that restructured VEDP. We have had quite an increase in inquiries from data centers. As you all know, last year I shared with you a marketing piece where we had identified 16 properties across the region. 6 of those have attracted fairly strong interest in the last 12 months. So we've already begun looking and working with both Dominion and Rappahannock to identify additional sites beyond those. Should those be scarfed up, we want to continue to put more into the inventory. And then we have and continue to work with the Middle Peninsula Alliance on the Pamunkey Net Initiative, which I know you all are participating in. I put this slide in because a couple of our public sector board members thought I ought to share it. I know Mrs. Long has seen this at a GWRC and FAMPO meeting. There is an initiative at FAMPO to create a marketing committee to step up the region's efforts to try to attract federal agencies. We were asked to serve on that committee. Really the point of this slide is that we can't attract enough federal agencies to absorb the outcommute and the growth in the workforce within the region. Basically by 2030, and you can pick whatever date you want to out there, but we just picked 2030. At the current trajectory of growth in workforce, but yet jobs being created in the region, the outcommute will go from 60,000 to about 72,000 by 2030. So what we have suggested here, working with other people on that committee, is that what the region really should look at more than just going after one silver bullet and trying to get federal agencies. We probably need a stronger regional strategic plan for economic development that takes into account much broader discussion. The question here is, do we really want to get to neutral? Do you want to get to net neutral on the commute by some time in the future? And you can pick whatever day. That should have been 2032 on this slide. And put a stake in the ground and say we're going to get to neutral, but here are the ways that we're going to try to do it. That would be one plan. If you only want to cut it in half, that's a different plan. But that's going to take a lot more input and a lot more collaboration beyond just what we at the Alliance do. And this is the list of our investors. So, Ms. Long, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. All right, Mr. Black.
Hey, Mr. Roberts, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mr. Black?
Doing well, thank you. Hey, I just had a quick question. On some of the committees that I'm serving on right now, like Rappahannock River Basin, and then even last night at GWRC, Mrs. Long had brought up something that I think is pretty important. You know, at the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, I've been going to these meetings for years, and we talk about modeling, and we talk about, you know, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then you go on the Rappahannock River, and you see plastic bottles going down the river. And we're doing a lot of stuff on modeling and so forth, but a lot of the committee members are wanting to see, like, the meat and potatoes. What are we getting out of this? Like, what are we here for? Last night, Chairman Long mentioned at the GWRC meeting, we talked about doing another, they want to spend $100,000 on a study for the Fred. And she had mentioned, well, we kind of know our communities where the Fred should go or should not go. I guess my question to you is, I heard about studies and so forth. Could you send us an email exactly what what your organization has done for Caroline? And what the whole purpose behind it is, so that way we can say, hey, this is the benefit that Caroline has gotten, because it's getting down to that, once again, the meat and potatoes. It seems to be a lot of these regional things, we spend a lot of money on studies, and then I don't know where the studies go. I've been on this one for 7 years, some of them, and it seems we've had a few meat and potatoes things, but the reality, we spend a lot of money on studies, and it would be nice, I think some of that money could go towards whatever, something that's concrete that we can actually point to. So if you could send our staff an email as far as that's concerned, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. I may need to get some more guidance as to what you're looking for specifically, Mr. Black, but if you don't mind, I'll give you a call and
Yep.
we can chat about that.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Mr. Seelig.
Good evening, Mr. Roberts.
Good evening.
Go ahead and write.
Good evening, Mr.
I was going to
Seelig.
say, make your notes, because if you're like me, if you don't make it now, you won't remember.
thank you for knowing I can't do more than one thing at a time.
I suffer
Yes, sir.
from the same disease. Trust me. I don't know if you, and I'm sure you've seen that we approved the Air Lee site in Caroline on Route 1.
Yes, sir.
Which is going to be, over the next 12 months, moved along to be some category of a site.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how that fits into the region and what that will put us at it when they, in a year from now, where that would potentially, that was my first question. Let's start there.
Well, I'd have to see exactly what the Collinses are going to do initially. And what we could do, and this may go a little bit to Mr. Black's point, we've negotiated a contract with Bowman and FNR and Draper Aiden and ECS to come in and do a site characterization score. What that would tell the state is how far along is that site. And then they could score it in their scale. And if you're a business-ready site, they actually have a separate marketing initiative on their site for those types of sites. But you got to start with a characterization. So what I would suggest is at the end of that year, we probably ought to do a site characterization study so we can score that site.
Now, I see the Collinses, which is why I asked you that, because I see that they're a member.
Yes.
Does FRA help them with that process, or
Yes,
do they
sir.
have to pay for that process?
No, we'll help with that.
Because, that is a key site to what we're looking at economic development-wise. So could we, in relation to Mr. Black's question of how do we leverage some of these things that are, were a part of FRA, the developer that's actually got the rezoning as part of the organization, I'd just like to see how we mentor all that and pull that across the finish line, because it's really getting to be, brick and mortar is a tough sell, as you well know. So finding those sites, finding those organizations, looking and then marrying the two together is something that's becoming a bigger and bigger challenge.
We did meet with Collins, with Mr. Collins early on in the process. He came to inquire as to what specifically data centers were looking for when they came to us. Some of the parameters, the specs, what's the power requirements, what's the typical water and sewer requirements, what's the access to fiber. And we did a short analysis with him on that when he was focusing on that component of what he might consider on that site. And I'm assuming data centers are allowed in the rezoning. I haven't gone back to see what you all ultimately approved.
I would just like to see, 'cause I'm along the same lines as Mr. Black, we've got to start being able to push all this that we're working on together so that we can start pointing to, we're in this organization and they helped with X. So I know they mapped out a 12-month plan to be a certain level of ready over there. I think, Mr. Wilson, correct me, 12 months they wanted to be a class 4 or a class 2. Okay. I'm just...
I can ask him.
Just curious so that the ORIC property, which has long been, I know we've studied it, we've looked at it, we've got, can you give us a little more specific, is the wetlands delineation done?
Yes, sir.
Are there any more steps that are going to be, are we looking at anything
Mr.
else?
Selak, there's some discussions going on right now that I can fill you in on.
Okay.
If we want to talk about in closed session sometime,
That's fine.
that would probably be
Okay.
best.
And my last is, looking at the region, you're looking at 73,000 is sort of a net neutral to have commuters not leaving.
Or you have more jobs where there are commuters coming in that equal what's going out.
Thank you. So the question that I have then is rooftops, because we keep hearing there's not enough rooftops. And when I was on the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, I used to hear rooftops weren't the issue anymore. It was actually workplaces was really the issue. Is that still...
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about retail, that's a rooftop question.
Right.
Which is not really, we don't work much on retail.
Correct.
Very rarely, we would assist on distribution centers and have assisted on distribution centers. So when people talk about rooftops, they're more often than not talking about retail rezonings or retail growth. if you go back, if I can back up for a second to this chart. If you look to the chart on the right, you'll see where the labor force grew at 1.9%. That's about our average growth rate of participation in the workforce of people living in the region and actually working.
I understand.
Not necessarily working in the region. If you look at the amount of jobs being created, we're only creating jobs at about 1.7%. That's why the gap's getting bigger.
Right.
So you've got to figure out new engines on the job creation side in order to match what the population growth is. That is not a rooftop question. It's much more of a question of, are you creating enough jobs within the region to absorb the growth in the workforce?
Okay. I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Mr. Thomas, did you have your mic on?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Curry, good evening to you again.
Good to see you, Mr. Thomas.
We were talking about Airlie before, and I noticed a couple of things about it. One is there was a letter from the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, you to us in favor of the project. That sound right?
I'd have to see the letter. I was asked a question as it related to what would be the nature of development and what are we seeing. And I think the question that was put to us, are we seeing more growth in logistics or in other types of employment? And actually we're seeing more in other types of employment. But I'd have to see the specific letter.
Mr. Thomas, if my recollection serves me, it was more of a, if this is approved, this is what it brings.
It was
to,
directed
to
to
their
you.
menu, basically.
Right.
That was the question that was posed to us.
Yeah.
We typically do not jump into a rezoning consideration.
Well, just to make sure we're all clear, the letter I have was from you to Mr. Forehand.
Correct.
Forwarded to me by the attorney for Airlie saying, here's something in favor of Airlie. So I guess we can all understand how things work.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to make sure we all understand how things work. But just so I could follow up on that, part of their project was to be part of the Virginia Business Ready Sites program.
Yes,
And that's really what the gist of my question is. We missed the February deadline, so do you plan to help them as part of your marketing be part of that?
Yeah, the Business Ready Sites program accesses funds to help you with site characterizations. The
Right.
same thing I was just talking about earlier with
And that's
Mr.
what I'm
Seeley.
saying, you intend to
The
help them
answer
so
is
they can
yes.
get money?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how do you do that?
You have to apply for a grant through VEDP, and then there has to be a match. It's a 50-50 match.
Okay, between
That's
you
required.
and between you and the developer.
Can be, but typically we want the local government involved because we don't want to do it if the local government isn't supportive of it.
Okay.
So we would discuss it with Gary.
Okay, and
But you apply to VEDP for those funds, and then
Right.
we would administer the grant. The locality could do that directly if they so chose. But we've actually negotiated a master agreement that makes it more cost-effective if we use the engineers and geotechnical firms we've negotiated with.
okay, I just want to make sure because I'm putting all the data points I have together to to make sure we have a
Yes, sir.
thing. Now, Gary, did you want to add something, or you just got up to stretch?
The budget the board recently passed did have within our budget money to do that very thing. So we are already taking on that
Okay.
issue.
And that was the gist of my question, was that while I understood the application process to be on the developer themselves, based on what you and Mr. Roberts are saying, is there is some county financial input that would be expected.
Well, it can, if they are unwilling or unable to contribute, we're in a position to help. And that's part of our budget. Is there are a number of properties which are very
You're
valuable.
marketing quite a few properties.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to
Okay,
do.
I was just, this specific one was the one I had information on.
Yes, sir.
And you've got a lot that I don't know about because you code name and won't tell us. But that's okay. Mr. Roberts?
Good for Mr. Wilson.
Okay. Mr. Roberts, did you have anything to do with the MCD and expansion?
No, sir.
Okay, nothing at all. All right.
Not that I'm aware of. Gary may have asked us for research, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And the last thing is, can you tell us some of the success stories you've had just in Caroline, that we can go out and say, these are some of the success stories we had through the FRA?
Sure. Well, I've only been here 3 years, so I can't go back beyond 3 years and speak
It's
to
been that
anything.
long already?
Amazing, isn't it?
Wow.
We initially worked on the Harris Teeter project when it came into the region. There's documentation that we took them around the region.
Oh, you mean-
And they came back.
10 years ago, yeah.
Sure.
When we first had them,
Correct.
lost them, and then got them.
But I also think we did do some research on Gary's behalf when he was looking to update the information that had been provided previously to Harris Teeter. So we did do that. Remember, though, I can't close anything.
Right.
All I can do is bring leads, present opportunities. As was pointed out up here, there are 21 projects we've worked on this year, and Caroline's had an opportunity to respond to 16 of those. That's primarily what we do, is lead generation, and that's what we're here for. And 50% of our funding comes to the private sector to offset the 50% we get from the public, which is one of the best ratios of any regional organization. So if you're asking me to say, did we do X bricks and mortar in your county beyond the Harris Teeter announcement, I don't know of one that we've worked on. Have we been marketing the Russell Stover building? Yes. I met with a prospect in Canada and presented that building. But you only get 1 out of 75. The second thing I'm always reluctant to do is say, we at the FRA did X. It's a team sport. Economic development is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. And given that what we do is provide you the lead, I'd be very reluctant to ever say we did X, because frankly, you're going to have to do the heavy lifting and get it closed.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm asking that. My background has been in sales, sales pipeline, building your pipeline, X number of leads. How many leads does it take to get a sale? And I was just thinking that same kind of funnel effect, but out of the 20-some leads we had, and Caroline had a chance to bid on 16, we don't have a success story of those 16 yet. And like Harris Teeter, sometimes a success story comes 10 years later.
Correct.
And you have to be persistent and you know, kind of like a pit bull to dig your teeth in and keep staying there. So that I understand. I'm just trying to highlight what the funnel looks like. Excuse me. So of the 16 that we have up there, we don't have any that we've actually turned into a, you know, county business yet.
Not today.
Okay.
No.
Okay. But there are some that we have, so.
Yes.
All right.
And over the history, if you looked at this slide, if I back that up to the end of fiscal year 14, there was one prospect in that pipeline. One. And what we've been trying to do is build the pipeline.
Right.
And you have to touch 75 things, 75 prospects, projects, whatever, to get one.
Right.
So it's not a high ratio of success. Second, and this is a challenge not only for us, I put the site information up there. Some of the successes we've had have been the region had buildings. 3 of the 4 announcements last year were buildings. And we don't have a lot of buildings. And we're competing with other counties across the state who've built shell buildings. So what we're typically competing around is green fields. And everybody has those. The question is, can we make our sites better than what we're competing against? And anything that cuts the development timeline makes it more competitive. If you look at that, I mean, there are 400 and some sites in Virginia Scan, and only 23 are certified business ready in the whole state. And we don't have any. And that takes a long lead time. We're competing against localities who want to own land. And I'm not necessarily recommending that. I think you can partner with landowners and get pretty close to having something that's a business-ready site. But this is a challenge because we're competing with greenfields. Were it not geography, we probably wouldn't have the success we do have.
Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to know. And,
Sure.
you know, kind of you understand.
No,
the background of
reasonable
my questions.
questions. Very reasonable questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Anyone else? I want to thank you for all that you do. I want to thank Mr. Foreham for serving on FRA and representing the county and attending meetings. And just look forward to hearing from you next year.
Okay, well, I hope.
Or 6 months.
Or sooner,
whatever.
yeah, if we can get one of those 16 and we can get back with that,
All
that'd be
right.
great.
We'll see you in
That sounds
2020.
Exactly. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. All right, that brings us to Caroline County Treasurer, third-party delinquent tax collections. Come on up, Beth. Drive home carefully,
Good evening,
Curry.
Madam Chair. Board members, you all have gotten a summary of the report that I had prepared. We started this process a little over a year ago with the 2012 and 2013 taxes, which they have done about as much as they can. They are bringing a couple more, I believe, to court next June 4th. To try to get some judgments on some of the ones that they feel like or get the information from the taxpayers. In February of this year, we took a look at the 14s, and if they had not been previously turned over to TACS, we turned those over along with any associated taxes with those accounts and all of the 16s that are associated with any accounts that TACS has. So, we found that working with them on those has been good. At the last meeting in August, we had collected $91,190 from them, and since then we've gotten an additional $96,667. So I mean, it's they've been able to get money from people, a lot of people that are out of state. They filed with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and they're using their legal resources to get them. We've been very pleased with the process, and it has allowed us to then concentrate on folks that have more current taxes, like doing tax liens and DMV stops, and we found that we're concentrating on them. We can do more of those, and so I think we're seeing increased collections.
Sounds good to me. Mr. Black.
Yeah, I wanted to really thank you. This seems to be going really good. So I just have a couple of questions for you. When did actually, do you remember when they actually started for us? Like what month was last year? So it'd be 2000.
It was January, the middle of January of 2017.
It was January 2017. So we're talking, okay, about 16 months or so, 17 months. All right. Okay. And now the other thing too is I had someone call me from outside the area, and I'm pretty upset. And this company had been in touch with them. Just had a question for you. If this company, this tax, if they contact someone, say, hey, you're behind, you owe Caroline County $500 or $1,000 or $2,000. Do they still have a right to pay you, or does it now have to go through them?
It has to go through them.
So once it's turned over to them, okay. So that's the, and really the reality behind it is this isn't being turned over to them unless they're
Right. We have
Right.
sent notices, and a lot of times, and I mean, they're using their other resources to find people that we didn't have
Yeah.
the resources to
I
find
have no
out-of-state,
problem. Yes.
addresses. So
Yes.
if they didn't tell us that they've moved, then they weren't getting the notices.
Right. This is someone. So this is not just like this is people like, for example, the person who contacted me was from Richmond, so they were living in Richmond, so that was within the state of Virginia.
Oh.
But, so I mean, it's going on within Virginia as well as.
It is. Oh, yeah, they're
Yes.
collecting within Virginia as well and setting up payment plans. I mean, I see some, because it's either Brittany or myself that are processing the payments because they are ticket specific, so we're trying to make sure we get the tickets that they're collecting on. And they've got payment plans. I mean, there's some that'll pay just a couple of tickets, this month and a few more the next month. So, I mean, they're working with people too, so.
Okay. Now, do you expect? I mean, I know this. You're not a soothsayer, but do you expect? I mean, because do you expect this pace to kind of keep up every 6 months or so? Is this what you're kind of looking at? Or do you have?
I mean, they have had good success with these, older accounts that we haven't been able, people that have moved out of state. So I can't tell, how much might be coming, but I mean, it seems like it should stay about that.
Okay. Well, I think this is excellent because it's only fair to the other taxpayers here in Caroline that everyone, I mean, if we get everyone paying their taxes, it's a benefit to everyone else who actually does pay their taxes on time. So I think this is pretty important. So thank you. I really do appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for your work on this and working with, I know it's not easy, providing all that information. You would categorize this program as a success?
In trying to collect the delinquent taxes, I mean, we use liens on, folks' wages, bank liens, the debt set off through the state income, the DMV stops, but some people just don't pay, no matter how many times you send a notice. But, once they've gotten the information from the attorney, I mean, they tend to pay, which kind of, same thing happens with real estate, like we'll send notices and try to collect it. And then inevitably, we're going to turn a list over to Sands Anderson to collect the real estate taxes. I mean, that's kind of...
It's their business. I would expect them to be better at collecting than... okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to our consent agenda. Are there any changes to the consent agenda? Any requests for changes?
Madam Chairman, item C.
Do you want to move that to a different section, or do you just have questions? Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus C?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
All opposed? All right. And so, Mr. Underwood, you just...
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I only have one question, and maybe that's for Mr. Cully or...
Joey's coming up.
Regarding Park and Recreation, how much time is spent, and do they have the necessary personnel to take this? It's not going to be cumbersome. I don't know how many rentals we have, or...
Probably 50 to 60% of the renters are actually Parks and Rec activities. So really, they were having to set up everything for the facility, then they would contact Public Works. Public Works would go setting up and getting everything straight for them.
So just being more efficient.
Correct. About 20% of that was fire and rescue.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve consent agenda item C.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, we have a few minutes before public comment. How about if we bring 8 forward, the county decal under new business, and that way Mrs. Curran can head home, go back to work. She's still got work to do at the office, she said. So you're up again. So we are going to move forward with, under new business number 8. That's okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, pretty clear-cut issue. There's a directive from the Virginia State Police effective January 1 of 19 that county decals have to be moved from the center to the left hand side of the windshield as you sit in the car. And the change is related to the newer model cars. The stickers could potentially obstruct the crash avoidance technology. So the issue for us, of course, is what do we do with the existing decals? And in talking with Beth, we've identified a couple of options. One is to obviously eliminate the decal altogether. That is something that the overwhelming majority of the localities in the Commonwealth have done, and that is supported by both the sheriff and Beth. The other option would be, we don't believe it's practical to ask citizens to remove the stickers because they're going to get destroyed, and it's virtually impossible to tear off a sticker and move it. I suppose we could charge $3 for a new decal, but we think it would be more practical if we're going to go that route to actually send out new decals along with an explanation of why they need to be moved and where. And Beth has estimated that cost to be around $25,000, I believe. So we are actually recommending that we eliminate the decal as so many other localities have. One thing that we would want to do is to watch the tonnage at the solid waste sites and see what that does. If it does go up appreciably, then we could look at a decal, a separate little sticker for landfill use or solid waste site use like a lot of localities have done. But our recommendation would be to eliminate the decal entirely. I'll let Beth add anything that she has.
Well, I know we had this discussion about 6 months ago, but we have a lot of folks that are confused about the sticker, and right now in this interim, we have folks that they're getting their cars inspected, and their state inspector is taking the decal off. And the way the ordinance is now, we're charging them $3 to replace it, but they're really not supposed to put it, this county ordinance says it should be in the middle of the windshield. So it's kind of confusing right now. So if we could move to eliminate the decal, I think it would be better. And it's not a revenue issue because we're still collecting the annual registration fee. So it's not, the decal has not become a revenue item.
Right. Thank you.
We're still going to have a
Mr.
decal fee?
Yeah. Mr. Shebel, I have a question for you, and then I'll open it. I'll go first this time. I'll take privilege here. Mr. Shebel, will you be able to monitor the tonnage to see if there is an increase over the next year, or if we start to see a lot of violations, we could always go back and revisit this? And also, can we make sure all of our sites, especially those close to borders, are well labeled that they are for the use of Caroline citizens also, so we don't have to pay for my neighbor's trash to be?
Yes, ma'am. We monitor from each site of how much trash we pull, so we can go back and look for years of how much we pulled from each individual
Right,
site.
because I believe before we had the staffed area in Port Royal, it went down like 30% or something once we moved it to a
Yeah,
staff.
that one dropped significantly. With having a manned site now, I think it's going to take a while for people to really to build back. If you look at the $25,000 just to put the stickers out, you can haul 62 loads of trash for that amount of money. That's 10 tons per load. That is a lot of trash. So it's going to take a long time for people dumping trash that they're not supposed to even pay just for the initial, not including the ongoing process of having to administer that program. So.
Right, and I agree, except I think there's a cheaper way to do that. We could just put a decal in with the tax bill. They wouldn't get their tags if they don't pay their taxes anyhow, but we don't need to do a separate mailing, but that's just a thought, because if we're going to eliminate it, it doesn't really matter.
Right, thank you.
So, all right, thank you. But please make sure all the stations are well labeled and marked.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion on this? Mr. Black?
I don't have any discussion. I just, my opinion, I agree with Ms. Curran. I think it's, at this point, we had talked last year, I think we had the discussion about 6 months ago, and that was before the Virginia State Police thing came out in late last year, in which really kind of makes it pointless now to have our citizens tear them off and then move them and then have to pay the $3 or us to pay the $25,000. I just think let's just go ahead and eliminate them and just keep the fee.
Yeah, and I realize I was the one that had the biggest issue about that because of our experience up where I live, but as long as Mr. Shebel can check and make sure that it doesn't get out of hand and keep an eye on that, I have no issue with it. Other comments, discussion? Do I have a motion?
Don't we need to amend an ordinance for this? So we've
Yeah,
got
it's
to,
probably, I don't know, I haven't looked at it. It's probably in the ordinance that you issue decals, so you probably have to change the ordinance.
correct, that's what I'm
So we
thinking.
won't be able to move on this until next month?
Until we actually do we got to advertise a public hearing for the
So
ordinance.
we need a motion to move forward with the public hearing.
I I move that we move forward to public hearing.
Second.
Oh, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Submit. You can go home now, Beth.
Yeah.
All right. What else can we move? Is
You
there
want to
another
do
quick one?
13?
Yes, we can move to new business 13.
Because that doesn't, not seeing any big crowd. I will just say that I have a lot of time invested in this whole process, and it is a facility that was specifically built and actually has kept Dahlgren from being on the BRAC list. I think it's a facility that needs to stay where it is for the region, not just for Caroline, but for everybody that works in and around this region. Every business that anybody that works there that touches a business touches every locality. So from that perspective, I'd just like to see us approve the resolution. And I'll make that motion if.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. That eliminates 13.
Thank you, fellow board members.
How about 9? Is that a quick one? Let's move forward with 9 under new business.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening.
Good evening.
In your packet, you have a request from the Department of Fire Rescue to examine our EMS billing rates. Our contractor, we met with our contractor, and they're recommending a small increase in our ALS, BLS, and ALS 1 rate. To kind of touch on where we are with our EMS collections, if you go to the last page of that packet, over the last several years, our collections have increased significantly on our runs. Over last year, in 2017, we brought in $814,000 in EMS revenue
Chief.
recovery.
That's a great presentation. I think the board agrees with you. So I'm going to make a motion that we follow your lead and
Did an excellent job.
change the fee. Thank you again, Chief.
Thank you.
All right,
Any
can I have a
questions?
second? And discussion, Mr. Forehand.
Yeah, thank you.
Any thought of the 15.7% sent into collections, or have we pursued?
We have not, and that would really be a board decision. There's a cost associated with that, but I think that our collection rate is extremely high. I'm pleased with where we are.
It's lower than our tax collection rate, but.
Understood, understood. But in the
Turn
EMS
to
world,
Where there's insurance available to bill, yeah. Okay. Has there been any thought on other recoup, fire and EMS recoup, like a bag of stay dry is fixed billed for X number of dollars and things, services like that we provide that are consumables that we end up paying for that we really don't, I don't think we bill back for. Maybe we do. I just don't realize it.
we do have a program to recoup our hazmat costs,
Okay.
the stay dry, those things associated with any kind of spill. It really comes down to the responders collecting that data, what was used, who the spiller is, who we can charge. Chief Madiak, when he was here, was very aggressive with that. Since he's left, that has kind of waned off.
Okay.
So
Okay.
policy's out there, the collection port's out there. We just haven't seen that.
We can add this on for another topic, another time, as far as other ways of bringing in revenue, but I think we probably need to stick with what the motion is right now.
Oh, absolutely. That was just other question while he's standing there. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Good use of time.
And
Any
ju-
other, go ahead.
Just one other thing, we are receiving a court-ordered revenue. When someone goes to court, in the last year, we've received a fair amount of money in the court saying, hey, we want you to pay some restitution to fire and EMS. And it may not have been a crime in our locality affecting us. So we're seeing some money come in from that outside source unsolicited.
Good,
Thank you.
nice, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second, and we've had our discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Why don't we take a break
So
here,
moved.
because if we
All
don't, we're
right.
going to go long
Yep.
on the break.
I was just waiting for 7:15. We're going to take a 15-minute break. We will be back here for public comment at 7:30. At this time, I will reconvene tonight's meeting, and our next item is our one public hearing for this evening, which is the Virginia Department of Transportation fiscal year 2019-2024 Secondary System 6-Year Improvement Plan. Mr. Nelson, come on, wake up. No? Oh, I'm sorry. Sit back down. I forgot public comment. You get to sit down. I forgot public comment. Pam's keeping us straight over here. That was just a test. You didn't have to go all the way back there. You know, it's a small crowd tonight. All right. My apologies. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment on anything that is not a public hearing this evening? On anything that is not a public hearing this evening? Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Now we will open our joint public hearing for the 6-year secondary road system plan. All right, now, come on forward.
Now I'm all out of breath.
Sorry about
That's
that.
a lot of walking for me. Good evening. I'm Rick Spurlock, and I'm a VDOT project engineer for Fredericksburg Residency and Caroline County. Today's public hearing is for the 2019 through 2024 fiscal year plan and the 2018, the remainder of that fiscal year. Proposed 6-year plan, the following has been recommended. Route 629, Monarchy Road, which is under construction right now, and Caroline Village, which is Mason Drive, Julienne, and a little piece of Kennedy Lane. These would need to be, these are existing non-hard surface roads. They would need to be added via rural addition, sorry. And they will be taken in and designed to the department's rural rustic standards and then hard surfaced. So with that, I can take any questions you have.
I have one question, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Seelig.
And it's about, I've had some folks from Rixey Road, which is a state road, but apparently the whole road isn't hard surfaced, but part of it is. Can we look at what it would take to surface the rest of that to like the train tracks?
Is it a state maintained road right now?
State maintained road as best I know.
Yes. Yeah, we could look at that.
Can we just look, I don't know that, I don't know, I'm not ready to add it, but I'd just like to know what it would take or what the situation there is.
Okay.
If you'll just take
I
that
can
as a
provide an
note.
estimate.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And of course, I do want to stay with the addition of the Caroline Village that you already have on our list. I appreciate those estimates and getting that on there for us. Anyone else?
Just
Mr.
one,
Underwood.
Burris Lane, that road is just horrible. I'm sure you probably haven't looked at it because it's so far.
I have not looked at that.
Would you, the road, for one, is very narrow, but two, it's very poor condition.
Same thing, you
Excuse me.
just want an estimate on what it would take? I can provide that.
Mr. Thomas, first, thank you for making sure Monarchy Lane was on that 6-year plan, and it will be finished by late spring, early fall. So thank you very much. And
Actually,
other comments?
I was trying to look that up, and I think it's the year the Colts won the Super Bowl, so that might have been 10 years ago, but it was part of that district. I would just like to take every opportunity, and I need a little bit of levity to cure my anger, but you don't have anything to do with flashing yellow lights, do you?
I do not.
Okay. You're going to make sure none of these roads get flashing yellow lights, right?
I don't think these will.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I know Mr. Nelson's there. I appreciate all the good work he's done, and we'll follow with the higher-ups. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burlock. We'll open the floor to public comment. If you just stay close in case anybody has any questions. Mr. Fincham, do you have anything you need to add before I hammer?
I was just going to ask for two clarifications. Mr. Seeley, do you want to go ahead and request Rixey Road be included subject to availability of funding?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it should already be in the state system.
It is in the secondary road system, and that I believe ends right before the railroad tracks. There's a little turnaround there right before the railroad tracks, but it is an unpaved road, and it is in the current secondary road system. Mr. Underwood, Burris Lane is already a secondary road itself, so that may qualify under some other funds for the improvements to that road. I'll get with Mr. Nelson on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fincham. At this time, we will open the public hearing for anyone who would like to make a comment at this time. Please state your name and your voting district and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone like to speak? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kamal Kurtulis. I reside at 13274 Julian Street. And I'd like to take the, I'm actually in your district, Madam Chair. So now for those that are more on the visual side, if you get bored of my speech, just YouTube search Julian and Mason. You'll actually see a visual representation of what I'm trying to describe to you today. So we're talking about paving precisely 1 mile of road affecting approximately 50 homes. The speed bumps are, I guess in my opinion, an absolute necessity here. Since there are already 4 speed limit signs, 3 additional slow signs, and 2 existing speed bumps that exist currently on Mason Street. The roads are very narrow, and the width is approximately 15 feet. That's just a non-scientific number, just an approximation, which is one of the reasons why we also need a speed bump on that road. A lot of speed bumps, actually. The approximate population, right off the top of my head, of the children under the age of 10, I would say probably 15 only on Julian Street. So, now I took the time to accumulate about 8 responses from fellow neighbors. Most of them have children, including myself. And of course, those letters were shared with you on the May 8th. It was rather shared with...
Yes, I have them, and they're, Mr. Culley will get them out to all the board members. It was our error that they did not get in the board packet.
Okay, that's fine.
But they do exist.
So I do share the sentiments of some of my neighbors who have had very, how should I put this, colorful adjectives to describe those roads. So hopefully, some have complained, for instance, about the during emergencies, the roads would be challenging for officers, medics, and firefighters to reach the locals. So it's one thing to consider. Some have complained that families with children have to walk through a very dusty road to and from school, since the bus stops are at the beginning of the streets. I am one of those individuals, since my 2 daughters they attend BGE here, and just going through that road could sometimes be messy. Some have also complained that the potholes are so deep and so bad that they have got their front tires stuck one morning in a deep pothole. So hopefully, we'll look to evade that. At this time, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll get those speed bumps, although Mr. Nelson just sent me a 50-page PDF, which I'm looking forward to read into, but thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this issue? Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this issue? Hearing none, this public hearing is now closed. Discussion? Well, I certainly would like to get the Caroline Village roads on to the 6-year plan, along with, we've got two other, one for maintenance and one for another addition. Is there anything else?
I make a motion, we approve the 6-year transportation plan for 2019 through 2024 secondary system plan and fiscal year 2019 secondary road and bridge construction.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
That includes the additions you asked for?
Yes.
Is that your motion? Thank you.
Thank you for checking, Mr. Thomas. Any opposed? So moved. Stop thinking of us. Thank you very much, and we will keep in touch. I'll be watching the calendar with Mr. Nelson. All right. Unfinished business. Mr. Shebel, discussion of possible incentives to spur housing starts. Is that Mr. Shebel? No. Who is that?
Looks like Mr. Pardon, or Mr. Collins.
I just see fingers pointing in all directions. Somebody volunteer. Mr. Colley, thank you.
We pulled this together after several meetings and discussions for your consideration. There's some charts in here as well that Mr. Fincham has developed. And it's become a budget issue as we move forward. In FY19, we cut what we've been budgeting since I've been here between 52 and 42 connections a year down to 21 and 20. And if we don't really do something or catch some sort of break, we'll be budgeting pretty much 1 or 2 next year because there's no lots left available. Walton, that owns, Ladysmith Village owns 2 lots that they can market and sell. So believe it or not, they're really not marketing or doing anything. The rest of those lots are owned by people that bought them when the price of those lots was way more expensive than they can sell them for today.
Those lots are the commercial below taxpayer on top lots, just so you're aware.
Right. Well, there's a few that are still in there that, in your section over that are owned, but, like some foundations are started and all kinds of stuff, but they paid a lot for them. I don't know that you'll see those developed anytime soon. And in Pendleton, there's about 12 lots. There's 8 lots in my section. And Fincham, help me with that. There's 12 more towns in the back and 1 lot. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot left. And they've got 12 townhomes under construction and 1 house currently in there now. And so now they are looking to market to a national to try to sell another section of homes along with the 8 lots that are in Section 1 of Pendleton. So if they develop those, it may be that those next year will come online, but if they don't open up Section 2, there are no more sections, and it's pretty much the same in Belmont. So we've pretty much run out of places for connections for the water and sewer to get that revenue availability fees. So we looked at what some of the costs were with Spotsy as far as overall what the water and sewer, what proffers, what all those things are, and it turns out we are more expensive to build a single family or a townhome in permit fees and other fees and water and sewer connection fees. And so that's what we just put this information together for you to have an opportunity to look at it. And we're not necessarily suggesting you do away with things forever, but maybe a 3-year period to see if somebody will open up another section, because that's the same issue Walton's got. They need to open up another section of Ladysmith Village, and it's expensive to put curb and gutter and water and sewer pipes and do all the earthwork that goes on when you can only sell a lot for X and then build a house on it. So I know that they've also been looking at trying to market their property to a national to see if there's somebody interested. I know Tri-Court is that people have actually been in planning, building. They actually are doing the work in the neighborhood, some environmental work, looking at what the soil types were. So, I mean, I know that they're looking, but I guess the math's got to add up. So these were some of our recommendations on some of the things that you could do as far as, and I'll let Mr. Fincham speak to the permits and proffer side. Maybe Mr. Shee will speak to the where we came up with the number for availability fees to kind of give you a little more in depth on that. So if y'all would work on that real quick, it would probably be better than me rambling on. But we've had probably 4 meetings to try to talk about what we wanted to recommend to at least have you look at.
Do you have numbers? Because we would be in a catch-22 situation if we said there's no water availability fee and no proffer fees. We would be losing money and not really able to pay for the resources we'd have to add to it, because each house has students for schools and all those things. Do you have numbers for at cost what the water connection fee is, at cost what the availability fees are, so that we would look at breaking even there to recover money in another
That's what
area?
I think Mr. Shebel can tell you, that we're not talking about going to zero. We're talking about going down, and then when you figure you get a customer, you start actually getting somebody paying a monthly bill, so that puts the money into the utility as well.
Dude,
So
I didn't see at cost in this. We just had a chart there. You have.
he can explain it.
I don't really want to know at cost numbers in public either.
Well, we're not charging enough to be at cost.
You're
As
not
it
charging.
is.
You're not charging enough to be at cost now.
No, sir.
Not for debt.
Not under the connections that we're getting.
Okay. At some time other than the board meeting, what I would want to know is what the actual cost would be for water availability fee. Not what the charge is, but what it actually cost us to do that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Barry, how many we get? We change for every one. Yeah, because that's a fixed amount, so that would just be if you had 50 or 100 or 10, and it would be way more if you had 10. About what
Well, but you would take that in your current debt and divide that by what's left that's available to be able to sell, and that's kind of where that number comes from. Same thing on your wastewater. So we got 1 million gallons left of wastewater to sell. You divide that by your debt, and you come up with a number that it would take. The rates that we actually looked at would pay for without interest, so just paying the base fee, the principal. So those are just principals only. It doesn't even touch that underneath of the current rate. Looking at the overall expansion of the facility, what we owe, so that's using 400,000 gallons of water and 1 million gallons of wastewater, and dividing that by our debt is where those $7,145 came from times 2. And then we added in the connection fees of $750.
But we haven't from a land use, I guess Mr. Fincham would know, perspective, we haven't had anybody come and say, I would like to have a new development, or I propose 50 or 60 houses.
One coming
Yeah, I mean, we had, if it's in Bowling Green, that's going to help us.
Nothing has come before the board or the planning commission recently. That is correct.
Is the last one Airlie?
The last residential?
Yeah.
And then residential.
Because that was 10 years ago almost.
The last major one was probably Carmel Church Station.
Well,
because you've got,
They got a housing component, yeah.
and there's a list of the major projects in the second, or in my memorandum to Mr. Cully. But the last major rezoning was probably Carmel Church Station. All the others I believe pre-exist that.
Because I know we've had this discussion at the board level about the number of available lots we have in the county. And
It's like 20,000 available, already approved lots.
right, but if they're, even like as Mr. Cully says, he's got lots approved in Pendleton, Ladysmith Village, and Belmont.
buildable.
But they really don't count if nobody's trying to develop them.
Right, they're not buildable today because you can't pull a permit on them.
Right.
There was a spreadsheet, it may not have been attached in your packet, but there was a spreadsheet.
I got table 2, the analysis of residential lots.
Table 2?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that tells you, on the one hand, the unbuilt platted lots that are currently recorded and available for construction in your major projects.
Yeah.
It also shows the zoned lots that I think is what you're referring to, that's your
Right.
theoretical density. Yes, sir.
But see, that's the philosophical point we have on the board sometimes, is saying, I may not want to, or a particular supervisor may say, I don't want to approve this particular project because I've already got 20,000 lots available. But if the 20,000 lots I've got available are not being developed, then I really do need to approve something new, because Mr. Wilson's got retail issues. He can't get any retail without more rooftops. But it's got to be, the other part is it's got to be on the western part of the county where we've got utilities.
Correct. The other side of that also is you're adding more lots to your unbuilt inventory.
Right.
That you have no direct control over when those lots are built. So you could approve another project that increases that last column, the unbuilt, unplatted lots, and you don't necessarily have control over when they're built. So you're adding to this theoretical number of units that are available without any benefits.
So Haymont can get built in any minute.
Well, you could take that off. That's not going to happen. But the
Well,
reality
Belmont
is,
North is the same thing.
well, there's more realistic possibility to Belmont North than Haymount. And I thought it was going to be built in my lifetime, and I think it's going to be built in my grandchild's lifetime, maybe. But that's really the point, is things like Haymount, which we doubt are really going to happen, and the other parts of Ladysmith Village that are sitting there that aren't really going to happen. All right, I mean, it's more of a philosophical question of the board. How do we get more development into the county? Do we get more development at these sites, or do we get more development by recruiting somebody else to come in? That's really the issue.
Or the other component, I think, if I'm reading this correctly, we're trying to specifically address concern with utility debt. If we're just looking for rooftops, then we've already shown that we can build out in the country more proficiently than we can build in the neighborhoods. And right now we have, various minimal lot sizes of 10 to 25 acres. If we're just looking to increase the population, then maybe that 10 acres should be 5 acres, or that 25 acres should be 10 acres. I'm saying that's the way we should go. I'm just saying
but that's
my
part
point of this conversation.
That's my point. This is a philosophical discussion that is more than just how to handle this debt issue we look at. If we really want to just say, how do we get 50 lots per year connected to our sewer system, that may be a different approach than how do we actually build it out in spite of the fact that we got 20,000 that are sitting out there.
Because the number of, looking at this, the one thing, and I'm not saying I disagree with the statement here. What I'm saying is, like, last year, 2017, we had 128, right? That was the number was 128 number of units that we
Yes,
added.
sir.
And that was the highest we've had since 2007. I mean,
But
we
but
actually...
less than half of those were on utilities.
Right, right, and I get that. And
I would think
Mr.
part of your rooftop discussion too is density.
Right.
So if we spread those rooftops over 540 square miles, it's probably still not going to be enough to bring anybody in from a retail perspective. And I see what Mr. Wilson agreeing with me. So rooftops is rooftop density. So just sort of sporadic rural development's not going to really help with that.
Well, I got a question. I mean, in a perfect world, let's say we go ahead and we do the recommendations of staff. I talked to Mr. Parton today, and he said there's a limit on the number, like in, let's say that Ladysmith Village, where we're on our public utilities, Ladysmith Village and Pendleton start building and they start booming. What is the limit per year that you can put in there?
250 units.
In each division?
Each year.
And so both in Pendleton, so technically we could add 500. I mean, if they wanted to. I mean, I know it's not going to happen.
Right.
But yes. But what my point is what we're saying is, you know, we're talking about the utility debt here, but then there's other things we're talking around. Mr. Schiebel, you're talking with us about our long-term water solution. So, I mean, we got to take that into consideration. Like, I mean, can we, you know, I mean, there's other factors. I understand we're looking at utility debt, as Mr. Thomas said, we're focusing on one thing, but there's other factors that go along if you build out. I mean, it's going to take care of one issue, but then all of a sudden it's going to fast forward that issue of what the kind of initial cost you had told us about the long term, you know, of taking from the Rappahannock River. I mean, that wasn't cheap. So now all of a sudden you're fixing kind of a utility debt problem, right. But now all of a sudden we've got to pay huge amount of money to get water over to the western side of the county.
I got a $10 million debt right now.
Right.
But when I fix that, I got a $30 million debt.
And then in addition to that, I mean, the one thing that we've seen from some of the school demographic studies is while we really have not, I don't think we've really grown at the middle school and high school level, maybe it's gone down, but I think our elementary schools are, you know, I mean, I would say that elementary schools the populations are close to capacity. And so then if you bring in younger, then it's going to become, well, then all of a sudden you may need, I mean, so there's other long-term issues to this besides just the fact that we're concentrating, we're looking at one thing. And I'm not saying I disagree in this, but we seem to be laser focused on the utility debt, and I get that. But we've also got to look at, hey, look, it doesn't automatically, it's not just a cash cow. There's going to be other costs that come up if this were to work very well in our favor.
Well, I don't think we envisioned it working at the rate you're talking about. We're trying to, if people really wanted to, and we were booming, we could have all the fees we want, and they'd be moving here. They're not really moving here at a rate that these neighborhoods that we have that are zoned.
Right.
And so if they're not willing to invest to open another section, they'll become dormant neighborhoods with thousands of zoned lots and nobody moving in. Right. And so we're hopeful that we're not guaranteeing that if you did what we recommend, they're going to open another section, because if the money doesn't work out for them, now Pendleton's got to put turning lanes in Route 1 and move a water line that's going to cost a couple $100,000. So they got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work to do in Route 1 before VDOT's going to let them build another section in there. So we don't know whether the math works out for those businesses, but they haven't historically built 20 homes in there a year. To think that they're going to get to 250 because the national takes over, I mean, the people really got to want to be here for that to happen. And we're talking about it's like a 3-year trial period, not a let's let it go and boom. We don't want to be building schools and all those things that you're talking about. So we have thought of those things. And water capacity, we believe we have.
But we really need a laser focus on, Mr. Thompson, we really need to laser focus on a few neighborhoods. What we're really saying here is we really need the building to take place in Ladysmith Village and Pendleton. I mean, isn't that what we're saying?
Or Belmont North.
Or Belmont, right.
I mean,
somewhere on the system.
Now,
Well, my concern, and maybe Ben can answer this, is I don't think we can focus a fee on certain areas. To me, that would be discriminatory to somebody else that wanted to hook up. What is what is the legal ramification?
No, they're talking about lowering the fees. I mean, you've only got certain areas that have
Lowering the connection
made
fees to
proffers.
utilities. Yeah.
The connection fee and the utility fees. Right. You have to think about that a little bit.
Yeah, but
the proffers are different.
Yeah, if we lower the connection fees, that only affects people that are connecting to the county system.
Right.
The proffer fees would stay the same whether you build on the county system or you build in rural Sparta. It's the same.
No, you don't get any profits.
Yeah, we don't
there.
get any
You're all
profits.
talking about the developments.
Okay, rural
that
Sparta
have-
was a
that have
bad,
given
yeah, it
you
was a
cash
bad analogy,
profits.
but another part.
Yeah, because we're not
So-
talking about future cash profits.
Yeah, I mean,
Of
that's the
coming
thing.
developments.
But again, you know, my point is philosophically, how do we handle this short-term issue without the effects of the other long-term issues? I mean, I've been approached by somebody who wants to do a 55 and over development. That would be a great thing. You know, I don't have kids, probably need a little bit more fire and rescue, but that's limited, you know, impact on the county. That would be a great idea, but there are segments of the community that say this is not something they want. So it's not an easy one-shot fix, is my point.
But that's a new development. I think what the staff is talking about is, you know, these like 3 current developments where in theory, if anybody were building anything, you would get some cash proffers. But when you add up the cost of the proffers plus the cost of the utility connection fees, it becomes unprofitable for them to open up and try to sell more lots. So if you just had a trial for a couple of years and said we're going to reduce these fees or the amounts we're taking for a few years to see what happens, and then if you got too many people moving into those areas, you could always stop doing that and it would slow down again. But I think they're just trying to see if they could get a little bit
Theoretically,
more.
this project is in one of those areas we're talking about, theoretically.
Mr. Shebo?
That would be a new project subject to the new zoning legislation.
So you're not going to have to worry
All
about
this
cash proffers.
is
You're not going to get
you're not going to get,
I'm still going to get the same connection fees and the same other things, but if I have a development that's 200 units, I'm going to get 40 connection fees a year for 5 years. And that's the thing you want to fix.
That's great.
So that one project would take care of this whole thing while we're lowering something else.
Mr. Seeley?
What I've done is I added up, I mean, when you look at just sewer availability and sewer connection, we are cheaper than King George, we're cheaper than Fredericksburg, we're $2,000 more than Spotsylvania, just on sewer.
Oh, yeah. But
If you
gotta
do
look at the
just
line.
sewer, I'm looking at these as 2 components, not one. In Hanover, we're about 3,000 less. I mean, more than Hanover. So, are we looking to I mean, I keep hearing Spotsylvania's booming, they're at 13,350, we're at 18,000. So you're $4,650 different. So the 4,000 and change is making that big a difference?
They have no proffers, so there's no proffer on the lot. They did away with them, so did Hanover. And evidently their building permit fees are a little bit less.
I mean, so we're talking about revamping everything to do something.
Yeah. And my proffer pays for fire and rescue, sheriff, schools.
But we're really not getting the profits because they're not building. Because they're not building.
But we don't need any additional.
Yeah. Yeah, but if I build and don't get anything, then I'm at a negative somewhere else. I'm plugging one hole and then I got another leak over. I'm run out of fingers.
If you were to have, for example, I'll use the 20-acre parcel anywhere in the system, and somebody wanted to do an assisted living, it would be platted without proffers because nobody can collect proffers anymore. And then you compare that lot to a lot to our north or to our south, it's already going to be 10 to 15% less in value because of it's here, and they're going to pay $5,000 more in connection fees. So you look at thinking at somebody that wants to spend $1 million to develop 50 senior or assisted living or senior a small development on 20 acres, 40 homes. You do the math. It's substantial just from the actual value, just become proximity. Then you add on $5,000 a lot. Say there's 40 lots. That's $200,000 plus the additional value of the land. So it's and you look at it in those terms, it adds up, and that could sway someone's decision, one way or another.
Mr. Forehand?
Mr. Black?
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but what are they going to sell that house for in Spotsylvania? I mean, I just gave you the statistic. I mean, the reality behind it is, if I'm a builder, I got to be honest with you. I mean, even if we reduce our fees, if I have a chance to build a home in Spotsy versus build a home in Caroline, probably going to build in Spotsy just because of the fact I'm probably going to get more for it where it's location. The profit margin is better. And so, yes, and so the reality behind it is, yes, so there's a catch-22 there. I mean, the builder will charge more in Spotsylvania than they will in Caroline.
Right.
I'm not saying I disagree with you.
It's a double negative for us because they get more money and they pay less.
Right.
So I'm saying that I think when I saw the board practice first time I'd seen it or heard of it last meeting, but it's just looking at dollars and cents. There are a lot of things aren't in our favor.
I just have two questions for Mr. Schiebel. The first thing, and it's kind of a little bit maybe, what's the difference between a water availability fee and a water connection fee?
Water availability fee pays for the availability of water in the system, so it pays for, if you look at water by itself, that pays for the investment we put in for water towers we're paying debt on, the lines to get to the subdivisions, the wells that we had to put in. On the wastewater side, that pays for your capacity and the investment in the wastewater treatment plant. The connection fee is the actual connection to the pipe, to the main in front of the house.
So do most localities have both these fees?
Most do, with the exception of Hanover. Hanover does not.
Because it just seems, do they streamline them all into one?
Well, Hanover, the way theirs is all into one, because very similar to us, is most of their development, they do all the work, and then we charge a fee and haven't done a lot. If you had a single-family resident that somebody already has existing and you wanted to connect water to it, then we typically would send our crew out. Otherwise, the developer's doing all the work. We set a meter, and then we collect the 2 fees for the connections.
The second thing, and I guess it's, because one of the things you had talked to us about and when we had those water master plan meetings was I think it's no secret that there's a capacity issue. We're concerned about capacity. Just out of curiosity, how comfortable, how many homes could we comfortably add to our system?
Right now, we have 400,000 gallons of additional capacity of water. If you look, the state says you have to figure 400 gallons per connection, unless you can prove otherwise. If you look at us, we're just under 200 gallons per home, so we could have 2,000 new homes built with the current capacity.
So there's some space there.
Correct.
And that's even in the worst, that's at the worst case scenario when we have drought,
Yes, sir.
everything. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Forehand? Did you have something, Mr.
Yeah,
Seelig? I'm sorry, Mr. Seelig.
Yeah, I sort of got broken up. Do we know what the average cost of a lot would have to be for Pendleton to even open, to even go into phase 2, and if they, I don't want to hear numbers, but do they know what they're aiming for?
What they told us, we had a conference call with them, that anything we could do to help with the overall cost of both availability and proffer would help their numbers work, as they're trying to market to a national firm to take on Section 2. But it's I don't want to speak, but anyway, so that's the best. There is clearly a development cost to go in there and clear the lots, put the storm sewers in, and the water and sewer pipe, and the curb and gutter, and put the roads into a, I mean, it's a
Right,
cost.
right.
And so that divides in amongst those lots that they've got to then be able to get that national firm to say, all right, we'll pay you for that lot, and then we're going to put our house on it, and then they've got to be able to sell it for in Caroline. And so it's a numbers math game for them that
Let
they're
me ask
trying
you
to
this
make work.
question.
And that's the same thing we got from Walton when we talked to Walton.
If we did this, and they built that, they went into Section 2, would all those lots be grandfathered immediately under the new financial system since they opened and
I don't think so. We haven't promised them anything like that, and we told them might be a 3-year period or something as a trial period. So I think if you were to make a change to both availability fee costs and or proper costs and we're going to do it for X number of years, they would know that going in, that would have to sustain them.
because to me, they would be looking at that cost, that reduced cost over the life of all the lots in there. Because that's the only way the numbers work. So when we talk about 3 years, I see them going poof, it's open, those 250 are grandfathered into, it's just like the profit from Belmont North. They proffered $1 million in utility fees the day they platted the first 100 lots. And of course, we never got the $1 million. They never platted the first 100 lots. But I'm just looking at, from their perspective, they've got to look at their cost is going to be in a box. And the only way it's in a box is if all those lots are grandfathered in that change of venue that we give them. And I think that would be the next request would be.
I don't know how you do that on utility fees, because you can change those availability fees.
Yeah.
Now, proffers, I don't know
I
either
think
exactly.
if the board considers something on proffers, you tie it to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy within a specified period of time.
Can we do the same thing for new development?
No.
No.
Aren't they supposed to be?
No?
You can't collect them until the building permit is issued. Is that correct?
No,
Still-
you can't collect it until between the final inspection
yeah,
and
okay.
the certificate of occupancy. So that's why I would tie it to
So-
the certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, so it's not going to be, I mean, you can't do what Mr. Seeley is suggesting in terms of.
Yeah, I think
they
his
can't
concern
argue
is
that.
that a
They won't be able to
developer
estimate.
would try to argue that. And that would be my suggestion as to how to counter that argument. If you do it for a year or 2 or 3 or whatever the magic number is, you specifically tie it to the issuance of a CO on that section within your
Sure.
period of time. And
Sure.
if you don't get the CO, tough, you owe the proffer.
Right, but that's the problem then for the developer to figure out how are they going to pay for their roads and curb and gutter and all that for all of those homes when they may only sell 10 and get them to the point.
Right. In this
Mr.
case,
Emerson, can we make this only on existing lots? Or does it have to be on anything? If we approved something new, would they be eligible for this?
Well, you can't, the proffer is only, you can't do anything, I mean, you're only reducing the proffers on
I'm talking about the connection fees.
existingly platted lots that have been approved. Basically, they may not have opened the section yet, but it's subject to these existing proffers.
Okay.
We're not talking about any kind of a future proffer. Since
What you're saying, Ben, is the future guy, I'm coming to the board tomorrow, planning commission tomorrow, with a 100 housing development. I'm not going to get this same deal that the other guys are
You're
getting?
not going to be able, he's not going to be able to offer to pay you a cash proffer. You can't accept a cash proffer for a residential development anymore.
So he would
You
automatically
could
have
under
an
an
advantage.
incredibly limited circumstance, but it's incredibly risky, and that's why many, many jurisdictions have just done away with cash proffers in residential developments because they don't want to get sued.
Chair recognizes Mr. Forehand.
I just wanted to offer some perspective. There was some question, what's the minimum? There's there are lots in Ladysmith Village that have been for sale for a year at $50,000. And they haven't paid the $18,000 in our connection fees. They have to put in sidewalk. They have to pay proffers when there's actually is done. And whatever money is left is what the developer would have had to put blacktop on the roads, the community property, things like that. So storm sewers, retention basins, all that kind of stuff. So it's not a lot of money right now. What's getting built in the back part of Ladysmith Village is already owned by the builders, and they're not getting $50,000 for them, which is a lot less than what they paid, but they're building one at a time. They get this one done, they find a buyer, they're risk averse, and they'll start on another one. They got a buyer, and they'll start on another one. And they built 6 in the last couple of years back there, but they don't have any lots left. So, and they're in so deep with a lot of these lots that
I don't have a problem with this, with moving forward with this, but I do think we need as a board to sit down and discuss the philosophical issues that arise from doing this.
So do we want to move this on to next month, or how do you all wish to handle this?
I think we can go ahead if that's the board's desire to go ahead and implement staff's recommendations, but the board needs to have a work
session or something of that.
I don't want to commit to another meeting, but have an hour discussion of this particular topic maybe at one of our board meetings, because like I've said, if we get to 50 houses a year to clear our debt service, there will be other impacts on those 50 houses a year. And that's what we're not factoring in, because we're just trying to grab this
And
carrot
this
at the
is a short
end.
time limit period too, so yeah.
Yeah, but
we gotta figure how many might show
it takes
up.
me 3 years to build a school.
Yeah.
Echoing Mr. Thomas's comments, is it may be cheap, the debt service on the utilities that we're currently paying may be cheaper than the debt service and everything else we're going to have to do to catch up with additional services in that time period. And I understand the growth process.
But and I will say, since I haven't had a chance to comment, I understand that thought, but the idea that we're going to have another great big bubble in a 2-year period, I don't foresee, and I'm looking at it and trying to keep competitive. And if you look at New Post, I mean, development is moving down toward Caroline, but they're squeezing everything in Spotsylvania, because every couple $1,000s those builders can save, that's more profit in their pocket. So if we're trying to encourage the people who have already built things and they still have a few lots that they want to build on or finish up a section, if we can give them a little bit of a please build here, it won't hurt us, and we can always do a shorter time limit than 3 years. We can do 2 years. That gives them enough time to build a couple of things. But Mr. Sheeple, I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why $11,450? Why not $11,500 or
Exactly.
$12,000
Exactly.
or $11,000?
exactly again.
It's actually was $5,725 for your availability fee for each, and then you add your $750 connection fee, so it's $6,475 per connection is what the number just came out. And I strictly took what it cost for our current debt service, not our debt service, but our current, that's lost in the word again, without the interest of what we currently owe on our principal.
Without
Thank you.
principal.
What we owe on our principal, and that's where those numbers came from.
Okay, so can we add a little bit, balance it out, and maybe do $12,000?
That would be a 1/3. That would cut it down by a third, right? Because we're at
Right now,
18,500.
the grand total, what was recommended, would have been $12,950 total. So you got, in Mr. Parton's memo, it's $11,450, and then you add in your 2 connection fees, so it's $12,950, which puts you $1,000 under your neighbors with the exception of King George.
Could we do an even 12?
Or 11,999, let's use the marketing, make it look a little bit better on paper, We're all subjected to that every day when they're. Exactly.
Just,
Yeah. Mr. Underwood.
I've listened to everyone, and I just think that based on what the staff is saying, we can't stay in the same place. So there are going to be certainly some challenges, but I think that's the risk that we have to take. Sure, we'd like to have a sure thing, but in this case, the sure thing is that if we stay in the same place, we're going to have nothing. So the wisdom comes from looking at the folks who are sitting at the table, who say, this is the plan. May not be foolproof, may not be with some pain, but it's what they do on a daily basis. Say, hey, this is the plan and we think this will work. We can make adjustments at any point down the road, but sitting still is not an option.
Mr. Forehand.
Ms. Shebel, if I had a piece of property and I had a water and sewer line that ran across the front of the property, but I chose not to connect to it because my property perks and I don't want to pay, what fees do I pay?
You would, if you're within 400 feet, your property is within 400 feet of the water line, you would be required to hook by county code.
Be required to hook?
Correct.
Is that the property or the residence?
The residents would be required to be connected to that water line. So if
if I
you're
put
400 foot from the property line, you'd be required to connect.
So I'd have to put my house 401 feet from where that easement is for that water line?
From your property line.
Okay. Property line.
But then you would, if you were building and weren't on the county system, you would have to pay for a drain field, whether that's
which is more expensive.
$4,500 to, a conventional system could go to $75, or you go into your alternatives, you're $20,000, $30,000 possibly. A well to do a shallow well, you're $3,500, $4,000. Deep well, $8,000.
But which fee is it? If I'm not hooking up?
To me, there wouldn't be a fee to the county if you're not hooking up to
I'm
us.
sorry. What would the homeowner have to pay?
For what?
If they had the option to hook up or not and chose to not, but there is a water and sewer line near their property.
Today, they would have to pay the whatever the fee is that's set by the Board of Supervisors. So today it would be $8,000 for the water and $8,500 for sewer.
Okay.
Plus the connection fees.
Just the availability.
And then they would have to pay to extend the service from the property line to their home.
Okay. So the availability fees, I mean.
That's $18,050 is what they would pay the county, plus a plumber to go to the property line.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And the other thing just to note is, for every home that's built, you end a new taxpayer on a new home, and you also add a new ratepayer into utilities. So that's $1,000. For somebody who uses 4,000 gallons, that's $1,000 a year in additional revenue that we wouldn't have.
It's $11,000 per child to educate them. Yeah, you know that.
So, I mean, it's a holistic.
It is.
Right. But let's just, I think of the moratorium for 2 years, if this is a couple of years, I like Mr. Forehand's idea of the 11,999.99.
We'd have to set a rate for water and a rate for sewer, so it's.
Tell us what the max is, we'll divide it up.
Yeah. So, Mr. Forehand, do you want to do a motion on that, or?
We wouldn't need to go to public hearing on all of these different changes, but if you have a consensus of what you want us to do, then that's what we could advertise the public hearing for.
Can we bring it back one more time I'd like to do one more reading just to see it, because it's not clear to me exactly where we are.
If you have some ideas of what you want the limits to, we could at least put those in so you would know what
Well,
they are.
I think Mr. Forehand has done that.
We can do that.
So, Mr. Forehand.
11,990 is my proposal.
And
You
just-
can make it work.
This is a reminder, even if the board were to even if you could make that change today, the developer, it's going to take him a year before he can even think about building the first home. I mean, they've got to go through all the permitting, all the VDOT stuff, all the design work, so there's a lot of work. So even the first year, you won't see anything unless it's on an existing lot that's really going to be any fruition through this whole process.
So this, is 3 years enough, or is 3 years? I know
I think
2
we
years,
talked-
2
we
years is
talked-
not enough.
We
I know
talked
that.
on 3 years on utilities from a staff level, we thought, and we talked as much as 5 years of starting out to give them room, because they need something. If we say 3 years, it takes them a year, it gives them 2 years. If they build 10 homes, they build 20 homes, what's their investment?
But what would be the problem, what would be the concern about starting off with a 3 and then extending it if it was working? I mean, we could start off with 3 and then say, okay, hey, look, this is working.
Absolutely, you
So, I mean,
can.
so we don't have to go
It's just
5.
the dollars and cents, as Mr. Forehand talked about.
I'd rather start off and say, hey, look, the 3, and then once we see the first year, we know from what you're saying, we're not going to get anything. So then why not, and when we see in year 2 and year 3,
Compromise at 4.
Well, no, I certainly we could float that, and if that's what we do, and it doesn't incentivize them enough to start something, that'll be your answer, that 3 is not long enough. That would be what I would tell you. If they run the math and go, wait a minute, it was going to take a year to go through design and build before we can actually build the first lot, and then we've only got 2 years before these things are going to change, they may go, we can't afford to invest the millions of dollars in what we're going to do. And so that would certainly be your answer. We didn't talk to him about a time frame of how many years it would necessarily have to stretch out. But I clearly think 3 is the shortest.
So you've got some ideas from the board, and we're going to bring this back next month. Is that
Correct.
good for everybody? All right. Thank you. Let's move on. Thank you, staff. We were doing real well. Yeah, that one is complicated. All right. Now we are at number 5, possible contribution to Caroline Little League for installation on lights on Little League ball field. I'm going to go first on this and then open it up. My boys played Little League. All for it. However, I'm hesitant about such a large amount to a nonprofit group for property we don't own when we have lights that we need to put in on our own park. So I'm really torn on this one. I don't mind giving them some money to help them along. They do a lot for the county, but I think $20,000 is a lot to ask for a private organization when we have so many others that do good things in the county too. So I need some help from my colleagues on how you all feel about this.
Madam Chair, I'll start. I felt pretty much the same way, and, you know, if we could put lights on a county park or maybe a school where there was baseball to be played, we would have that dual investment. I'm not sure how it would work with the schools right now, but I would like something like that where it was, you know, the county investing in a county facility but allowing Little League to use it, because that's the best use of funds that are the citizens' funds. So that would be my position. If we wanted to give them some seed money to be started, I wouldn't have a problem with giving them a small donation.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Black?
I think one of the things, if you had, my opinion, and maybe 20 is high, but if you had been to the, I think there was 3 of us that were at, yeah, there was, how many kids? I mean, there was just, I mean, there's just a ton of kids in Caroline that are served by the Little League. And I'm not saying that we have to give them the whole 20. You know, maybe if we give them 10 and then see where they are, then I would be okay with that. But there's a lot of, I mean, there was a lot of kids there on opening day. I mean, just loads of kids. So, I mean, it's something that obviously it creates a problem for them with scheduling because they can't play at night on a lot of different fields. So I would be comfortable with giving them 10 and then have them come back and kind of have them do their own private funding and see where they are. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Anyone else? Mr. Steele?
Madam Chair, I'm sort of in the same camp. I was at opening day. There were 300 kids there. 20 is probably more than I can go right this second, but I could see going 10.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood?
I guess I'll be the Grinch. I know several years ago, a couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3, I think it was 2, we gave them $10,000.
When the tornado took their stand
shed.
down.
I just have a difficult time. I know, and certainly in my district, in the park, we need certain playground equipment, and I would have a real problem if we did that. And I think I talked to Mr. Cully at our last meeting, my constituent meeting, about things that needed to be done. So I just have a real problem. I think we should support them. I'm thinking 10,000 is too much, to be honest with you. So I'm not feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Forehand?
My mind took me to I was in the $10,000 area. I would like to do more, but for the same reasons we didn't give the schools more money this year, and the same reasons that we haven't bought 2 fire trucks instead of 1, the same reason that I'm just guarded when it comes to larger amounts handed out. So it's a great organization. They are fundraising. Mr. Thomas, just to your point regarding county property that they are able to use, one of their primary revenue streams is the concessions, and that would take that off the table for them. So it would help them if they had a large event, but in the long term, it would kind of hurt them if they started farming out the fields that the kids would play at. But anyway, it's just a data point.
If I could, Mr. Forehand, and I think I probably told a story about being scouted as a baseball player, but I played 10 years of Little League, and I know what Little League is like. My neighbor actually donated the field that is the Little League stadium. And I've thrown out the first pitch several times for the Little League, so it's part of my heart and passion, but it seems like here again we need to do something that benefits more people than just the ones that are asking for it. I don't think they can use the stadium across the street because that's got 90-foot bases. But there are other places. There's Ladysmith, the Ladysmith School. I think there's a field out there, or a baseball field there. There's the park. There's the school between the middle school. There's baseball diamonds there. If we can, and I think the school board and the board of supervisors and Little League can all get past a lot of things, and they can get a portable truck. There's a truck out in Main Street now selling hot dogs and things that would do concessions, I'm sure. I just want to help the most people possible with the few dollars we have.
So, I guess if I were to make a motion right now, I would feel comfortable with 5,000, and they could come back after they've done some fundraising and ask for additional funds, say we've raised 20, or we're this close, can you give us some more? And then we'll know. It would have been a lot easier if they had come before our budget season. And I know it's not a huge amount, but I'm going to throw that out, and then we can amend or die or whatever, but that's where I'm at.
Madam Chairman, they had asked for 20, and like I said, I want to reiterate the point. When you start talking about 320 kids, if that's the number that was at opening day, there was a huge amount of kids. It's not like it's not serving a whole ton of people in Caroline. We're not giving them the full amount, and I think this does serve a lot of people. And I just think that the 10,000 is kind of to me, it's the halfway point. It's a compromise. I'll be honest with you, I think 5,000 is kind of I'm not saying they shouldn't be appreciative of 5,000. I just think that would still make them have to raise 35,000, because I think he gave us the estimate of 45,000.
I remember 60, but that was for 2 fields. How about this, just for a thought? If we were going to go with the 10, could we add some scholarship money for people that may not be able to afford it? That would help them, it would help the kids, it would help the organization. I mean, just a thought. If a indigent person wanted to have a child to play, that there's a pool of money to draw from to allow that $100 to fund the fee and the uniform. Just a thought. We do it for Parks and Recreation as well, to some degree.
What do you think, $750 toward lights and 2,000?
Parks and Rec is our program.
Yeah.
We're
There's
talking
no-
about
there's no baseball in Parks and Rec.
Separate, what's that?
There's no baseball in Parks and
But it doesn't matter. You're talking about scholarships, saying that we do it for Parks and Rec. That's part of the county. I just have a real issue doing it for a nonprofit, a private organization. I think that we should help, but I don't think we take the lead. I have a real concern when we do things like this. I have a real concern.
I'm Chairman, we're willing to spend up to $10,000 on a gala, a one-night event.
We didn't spend
We didn't, because we didn't have it. But we're willing to spend it. What I'm saying,
we cut the funding for the gala.
the-
You cut it out.
They didn't have it.
Yes, we did. We cut it first.
It's still sitting. It's still sitting in the budget. And it was, I think it went from 10,000 to 7,500. But the point is, that's a one-time event. This is going to be a capital cost, that those lights will be here. Those lights will be there for, they'll be there for 35 years. I just think that the 10,000, it's not giving them the full amount. So to me, that's, I think we start there, Mr. Forehand, and we can worry about the scholarship thing. I don't think that's a bad idea, because there is no baseball. There's no baseball, softball, really, unless it's an adult in Caroline County Parks and Rec, unless you do the Little League. That's kind of a, I don't think our Parks and Rec wants to compete with Little League. I think they have two, separate entities, and I think Parks and Rec sends them towards Little League if they want to do baseball and softball. I think that's the idea behind it.
He's making a motion.
Madam Chairman, before we make motions, if I could ask this last point.
Mr. Thomas?
Is it possible that we could at least broach with the school board and Little League putting lights at the high school, middle school field? Because there's a field between the high school and the middle school.
And the cost of that was like, Mr. Shebel gave us a cost that was like $200,000.
Was that the case? For all of them or one field?
One field.
So how are they going to do it for $60,000?
All the labor
they're
was
getting-
being done.
Yeah, all the labor, they're going to get poles, they're calling in favors, corporate donors, things like that.
Is it possible those same corporate donors and favors would work for the fields at the high school? Because,
I don't know, maybe if we hang up their company banners like the Little League does and give them public recognition like the Little League does. That's not something we do. But I'm not saying it can't be done, but there's a stark difference between what we do as a county and what they do as an organization.
And I understand that, and I think extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary answers, and that would be what we could do. I never thought I'd see an advertisement in Yankee Stadium, but I see it. So I don't see the problem. Can we just try that first?
Madam Chairman.
Well, I think we could do both.
Yeah,
We could-
Madam Chairman, I'd like to go ahead, and if they can die on the floor, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to give the Caroline Little League $10,000
Second.
towards lights.
All right, we have a motion and a second for a $10,000 donation toward lights for Little League. I'm gonna do roll call starting now, I think. Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
I'm going to vote nay. I want to do it,
Oh, I'm
but
sorry.
I want to try.
I'm sorry.
No, you can do
No,
roll call.
I can do roll call.
Yeah, just do roll call.
Yeah, I'm going to vote nay. I want to give them something, but I want to try the school option first.
Mr. Black,
I vote aye.
Mr. Seeley,
I vote aye.
Mr. Underwood,
Nay.
Mr. Forehand,
Vote aye, I'm not optimistic about the school option.
which leaves me as at the tiebreaker, and I am going to go ahead, time's getting late, I am going to go ahead and do this one-time thing and say, yes, we'll do the 10,000, but it has to be used on lights, and they have to have all their money ready.
10.
10. 10.
It's 10.
10. I just said it has to be toward lights. Motion passes. All right, let's move forward. Please tell him not to come back next year. We are at 6, Transportation Smart Scale. Hello, Ms. Fincham.
Madam Chair, members of the board, your next item is a request from the town manager of Bowling Green. He is requesting that we allow, under our auspices, the town of Bowling Green to make application for a smart scale project that would involve the consolidation and reconstruction of, I believe it's 4 crossovers on Route 301 north of the intersection of Business 301 and the 301 bypass. It's the town's economic development area where they are looking at promoting commercial development in that area. I have attached a copy of the arterial study that was performed on behalf of VDOT. I believe the page, there are no page numbers, but if you count back, it would be page 13, shows the area in North Bowling Green where the crossover improvements would be made.
Mr. Fincham, did town council send you a voted resolution for this option?
No, sir. We simply have this
I mean,
letter from the town manager.
I understand, but my question is, does town council know what's being asked for?
I cannot answer that question.
Because I'm not confident the town council, do they have to have any sort of a hearing or a meeting on this before they send it to us? Is there any requirement for that?
I can't speak to whether VDOT requires them to have a formal vote to submit.
Because we've got the town manager sending us his wishes and wants us to instantiate that for VDOT. And I'm not comfortable voting on something without a resolution from town council telling us what their wishes are, not the town managers. I don't know about the rest of the board members, but I mean, I wouldn't want Mr. Cully sending VDOT a letter that he wanted this smart scale project and we didn't know anything about it. And I'm just trying to be realistic.
Mr. Black?
I mean, could we fix that problem by just saying that we agree to move this forward pending a resolution from the town council? Wouldn't that take care of it?
I'm not sure what that does for a town. I mean, I want to know that they've seen.
Well, if they vote, if the motion is that they have voted to request us to do it.
Right, and there's nothing, this is the town managers asked us
Right,
to
that's what
do
I'm
it.
saying. So I think you could put a condition on it.
But
that we have to
I don't
receive
want to
that.
put a condition on something and them not know what all the other, because when I talked to Mr. Nelson tonight, they're looking at the 207 crossover at the end of Broadus, saying that they think they can fix it. They're going to actually do something with all that drainage work that's there. But these crossovers, I can tell you that every business out there on 301 now, whether it's Bud's Towing, the church, all those places out there are going to have a fit when they lose their crossovers.
I agree. I think the plan, Mr. Nelson's gone right. I think the plan's terrible.
But I'm not willing to go out on the limb and say, even say, if they agree, if they vote on it, we're going to go, because I think they need to inform everybody, or they need to be informed of what the options are, and not just what was given to us. Here's an option that the Board of Supervisors needs a vote on, because then it looks like we picked the project. And I don't want to be the one picking the town project. I think they need to see all the options, and they need to make the choice of what they want. And I think it's only fair to the businesses out there, because the burden's going to be on us if we do this tonight. They're going to say, well, the Board of Supervisors made that decision. You have to go see them. And what we're making a decision on is what's been handed to us from the town manager. I am personally not comfortable doing that.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Black.
One of the things that's kind of been hilarious at GWRC is that in these smart scale projects, if you look at all the smart scale projects that have been put in over the years, the other localities aren't particularly thrilled with Caroline because we're batting 1,000. I mean, we've just got done with baseball. We're batting 1,000. We put in for the Childsburg project, we got it. We put in for the Ladysmith Road project, we got it. Now, I mean, I think we could all agree that the biggest need in Caroline is that exit 104. And I mean, I think that's a huge issue. I mean, with the traffic down there. The question is, we've been, rather than, you see projects from Fredericksburg for bike paths. And some of the wish lists is, I mean, King George putting in 7, 8, 10 smart scale projects and just hoping something sticks. My question to you is, because I've seen it, but does it really, I mean, we have a perfect batting average with these smart scales. We go for one thing at a time. Does that affect VDOT in any way? Because it certainly seems like when the ratings have come out for Caroline over the years, when they've seen that we've done one, we've definitely fared very well compared to the other localities who have wished for 6, 5, 4, 7.
Well, the one positive point in this is it's less than $1 million for this project. It's not a $12 or $15 million
I mean,
project.
Mr. Fincham, that's a question. Do you think that affects any of the other chances of the projects in any way?
I think both the town's request and the 104 project both fit within VDOT's priorities for improvements within the corridor. I think our project would be more of a safety project, again, similar to the Childsburg project, whereas the town's would be an economic development project. So they would probably be scaled a little bit differently based upon the classification of the project, although all of the same factors will be used in the evaluation. Yes, you could make the argument that in some respects we might be competing against ourselves with the submission of a second project.
Well, then that becomes a concern. Because aren't we now putting in 3? Or are we're putting the 104 in, right?
Yes, sir.
Is there something else we're putting in? Or would this be the only other one? Well, I thought we were putting...
We have 2, and then Bowling Green's requested
Yeah, what's the
that we
second one
put
besides
this one in.
104?
Is it Dry Bridge?
Is
Which
that a
one?
smart scale? We pulled Dry Bridge.
What were the 2? There was there's another intersection, maybe it's Enterprise.
We had discussed Dry Bridge Road, but I don't recall the consensus or the majority of the board wanting to do that.
Enterprise is
Belmont, near Belmont?
we talked about Carmel Church Loop as it comes out between the truck stops and 95 as the 104 interchange in itself.
Okay.
We dropped Dry Bridge because that was something we thought the developer was going to eventually do, and that was it.
Mr. Fincham, one last question. And it says, in this letter, it says, in talking with VDOT officials, they informed the town and the county would have to submit the application on behalf of the town. There is no financial obligation to the county or the town for the project. Is that saying that
They're not planning on submitting a match or any kind of match to go with the application. It would be for straight 100% funding from VDOT.
My
But
only
Mr.
issue is, I'm sorry.
But Mr. Fincham, you keep saying "they," but I have a letter from the town manager not indicating "they." I think the real issue, we need some clarity. Is he speaking on behalf of the whole council? And I agree with Mr. Seeley that it should be their responsibility to make a decision and bring us a final recommendation, and not for us to make the recommendation to them, since it's what they want to do, not us.
Understood.
Just something just doesn't smell right. Doesn't pass the smell test for me, anyway.
It's certainly up to the board. If the board wants to not take action on this, then that's fine. I simply brought it forward at the request of the town manager.
Right.
Mr. Forehand.
Town manager.
If this application's not in by June 1st, then it has to wait another year?
It has to wait till the next cycle. That's correct.
2 years. And in actuality, this could be in 100% consent of the town council. We just don't know.
I have no clue. That's correct.
Who has a phone number? Somebody call Jason. Call him.
Can we just table this take a short recess?
We're good.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Good, next item.
Let's try to reach the mayor and the town of Bowling Green. Maybe we can put this to sleep. And we'll
So I'd hate to sit on it and then have to
And
wait
then
2 years
lose
to
it.
do anything.
No. All right, let's table that topic for a moment. If I go off protocol, then catch me. And that brings us to new business. Is that good? Okay. So, number 7, adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation school refunding bond.
Courtney?
Good evening. It's always nice to see Davenport.
Good evening. It's always nice to be bringing really good news as well.
And we don't have a report here tonight to get any positive.
I know, I said that to Mr. Parton earlier. I was like, you believe the press is not even here? Man. And the parking lot wasn't packed when I got here. I couldn't believe it. So as a reminder of where we are, as you recall, we talked back earlier in the month about looking at the bond issue that we did 2013 through the bank placement, where SunTrust was raising the rate due to the corporate tax rate change. And as a part of that, we put together a credit presentation and went up to New York May 10th and 11th, took the train up and back, and met with S&P and Moody's while we were up there. Yesterday, or I should say Friday, we got the rating back from S&P, and they came back with a AA. Earlier today, we got the rating back from Moody's as a AA too. As you might recall, pull this chart up, when I first talked about it, I did a little dotted line box with the AA2, AA as the top end of the box, and I think I had the A1, A plus as the bottom of the box, sort of as where I thought we might fall. And so I'm pleased to report that we ended up at the top part of that box. And I think a lot of this goes back to things that obviously the board has been doing over several years. This isn't something you just wake up one morning and go get a bond rating. I know we've talked about it a lot over the years with several of the boards that I've worked for about the things that we need to do. We've worked off the tax anticipation notes. You've built the fund balance up. You've got the budget in good balance and been able to put some money away. And so that's really what it's come down to. So if you look at the comments that we took, so Moody's literally released its press release this afternoon, right before the end of business. We have not seen they haven't released the final report. And as soon as we have it, we'll give it to you. We have a draft, and we're reviewing that. We'll give them comments tomorrow. But their press release basically said that the AA2 rating, I'm going to read this just so everybody hears it. The AA2 rating reflects the county's moderately sized and stable tax base, experiencing modest growth, average resident wealth levels, strong fund balance and liquidity, an above-average debt burden, and manageable pension liability. And so they saw as strengths the moderately sized tax base experiencing growth and the healthy reserve and liquidity position. The challenges in the future, as they saw it, were high debt burden relative to similarly rated counties nationwide. Factors that could lead to an upgrade: substantial tax base expansion and improvement in residential income levels, significant growth of reserves and liquidity, moderation of debt burden. Factors that could lead to a downgrade: trend of operating deficits, narrowing reserve levels, material tax base concentration, and substantial increase in debt burden. And so they've mentioned debt burden a couple different times, and I know you were just discussing this about the utility side. They do recognize that the general fund is making a contribution to pay the debt on the general fund, on the utility side, and so that enters into part of the discussion on the debt burden. So should the day come that we get enough users and we're able to have the system standing on its own, that'll be something that'll help the debt burden side. So as I look at the S&P observations, and that report is out, it was, went public on Friday. In terms of they're a AA. Oh, let me explain one thing. Moody's does not do outlooks for smaller governments. They do it for the state level. They really don't do it. They do it maybe for some larger entities like New York City, but most of the folks in those local governments in Virginia, you don't see outlooks. But S&P does. It's either positive, negative, or stable. If it's positive or negative, they basically have to make a move on the rating within a couple years. But in this case, we're stable, AA. All else being equal, we could raise the rating should the county's economy experience a material improvement in wealth and income indicators similar to that of higher-rated peers. You might recall the chart that I showed you that they look at basically 7 different areas, and they give you a score of 1 to 5. A 1 is basically very strong, and 2 is strong. So you can see you got strong on the economy, management, budgetary performance, very strong on budgetary flexibility, liquidity, weak on debt and contingent liability, and then very strong on the institutional framework score. So once they basically take all those scores and they have their percentage factors, that's how they come up with the rating with adjustments that they can make up and down. So you might ask, well, what does it take for us to get up to the next level? And based on their comments and our experience, continued positive momentum with the economic development opportunities within the county, which will then, of course, lead to tax-based growth. Want to keep your strong budgetary performance and maintain maintenance of the high levels of reserve funds, and then movement toward a self-supporting utility fund, basically getting away from transfers in the general fund and reduce that overall debt burden to the general fund. Those are some of the things that basically mimic what they said in terms of their reporting. So where we are today, we have seen a little bit of interest rate movement against us over the last week. But this is typically when we're doing refundings, I like to give you a very conservative outlook. But in this case, because of what we're doing, I wanted to make sure that you knew exactly where we stood. So this is at market, where we think the market is today. So we've given up a little bit of ground. But bottom line is we did this, quote, and I'll call it in quotation savings, because it's not like the typical savings. In this case, if we use the 345, which is the proposed rate that SunTrust gave us, we basically, if we could get this done right now at these rates, we'd be about $600,000 better than if we ended up at SunTrust rate. To give you a sense of where we are, we're about 34 basis points from a break even. So if rates were to rise by that much, we'd essentially be at that roughly 345. To put it another way, you see that all-in TIC in the bottom left corner of a 310. If we could get this done right now at this level, we'd basically be where we were to begin with, meaning before SunTrust wanted to fiddle with the rate. And I think that's a win if we can get that done. So what you have before you is a resolution that authorizes us to move forward with this public sale with the ratings that we've been given. Essentially, with your permission tonight and approving this resolution, we will mail the official statement in the next 24 to 48 hours and sell the bonds next week. Next Wednesday is what we're shooting for. And the way that we're going to sell them, we're going to put them out there for basically any large investment banking firms. It will be a set time that they will put their bids in, and we'll take the best bid, and they'll be the winning bidder. Questions?
Courtney, real quick, could you explain the slide here? We were going to lose $900,000,
That was at the higher
$995.
rate. That was at
Right.
the first rate that they proposed. You might recall that we had a cap when we did it. And
Well, I
if
mean, just the bottom line was almost $1 million.
That's correct.
Now you're saying
It's
$1.2 million.
Yeah, part of it is interest rates have gone up on us, and part of it is this is based on the 345.
Okay.
So we've lost a little bit of ground on the interest rate side. That's eaten up some of the savings.
Okay. So we're
yeah.
we're at break even of that 900,000, slightly ahead.
We're ahead right now.
Okay. Okay.
34 basis points, and we'd be essentially at the same place as the 345. Now, the one benefit is if rates did continue up, we get rid of that put. So there's still that benefit of, even if we move forward with rates at a little higher point in time, we get rid of the put.
So even if rates change again, we're basically fixed.
But in a week, unless the world falls apart, we should, 34 basis points would be a lot to lose in a week. Not saying we couldn't do it.
Any rumors that we can start to drive down interest rates for,
Usually if there's somebody bombing somebody in the Middle East, that helps us.
Okay.
In terms of war, not bombs going up, but really a war starting.
Madam Chair, if we're ready, I'll make a motion the county move ahead, and we basically saved the $1 million we were going to lose to SunTrust and give Davenport the authority to issue bonds.
Second. Could you include in just approving the resolution that's in the packet in the resolution?
Isn't that what I said?
In the motion.
And including the resolution that's in the packet.
Second.
As part of my motion.
That?
No. Thank you, Mr. Emerson.
All right, we have a motion and a second by Mr. Black. Actually, there are multiple seconds. All in favor? And Mr. Sealy is still out, for the record, just note he's still out trying to find out.
I think we're going to have a majority, Madam Chair.
So we still have a quorum, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well
Thanks for
done.
the hard work.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. These are fun times, and it's been awesome to see the progression over the years. So.
Yeah, don't get all excited. We're disappointed it's not AAA.
I understand.
Good job, Courtney. Thank you.
There are others that are...
And Mr. Finney.
Absolutely. No, everybody did a great job. We had great meetings, good story to tell, and so you can see the outcome. So appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We are going to move on until Mr. Satterwhite gets here with item number 10, which is your traffic ordinance, Mr. Fincham.
Madam Chair, members of the board, your next item is a request to amend Chapter 108 of the Code of Caroline County. It would specifically include a reference to 46.2-1213 of the Code of Virginia in our code to allow the sheriff's office to remove and dispose of unattended or immobile vehicles on public highways and roads that constitute a hazard. The sheriff has indicated his support for this amendment. He actually thought the language was already in the county's traffic ordinance, and it's not there.
Does this include abandoned, I'm sorry.
No. That's
Yes,
all right.
it would include abandoned
Abandoned
vehicles
vehicles.
on a road. So if a vehicle was untagged, unlicensed, and just left there, the sheriff's office could address that.
Any other questions? Mr. Black? I'll get
No.
right to you, Ed.
I'm okay with that.
This is your first reading, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Underwood?
Would he sign a contract with a towing company to have this done, or how would he implement this towing of abandoned cars?
I can't speak as to how that would be addressed.
Major?
Matters what zone it was in, and they would call the next available record on the list.
Since my name is attached to this, the sheriff called me about a particular situation and thought we should address it. This would be in the western zone of the county.
But the ordinance applies to the whole county.
Based on the towing ordinance of the county, there's the eastern zone and the western zone.
Right.
The western zone is all of those on Route 1 and Popular Automotive. They're grandfathered to cover 95 in that area. So it would be, I guess,
Whoever's next on the list.
on the tow list in the western zone.
And we would give him the card from Mr. Cully, and he would receive the call if there was an issue or problem.
All right, do I have Mr.
Thank you, Major.
Mr. Seeley?
Can the state police do this now? I mean, do we not just have the state police do this?
From my understanding, they can. Let me reread the statute real quick, though, but I think it may require a county ordinance.
Even for the state police to do it?
Yes. Yep, the governing body would have to pass the ordinance.
Okay.
Or even for the state police to do it.
Okay.
Make a motion.
Do I have a motion to go to public hearing?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we are going to public hearing on that one. Number 11, discussion of disposition of non-county titled fire rescue apparatus. Chief?
Great presentation, Chief. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're probably going to want to hear this one out. Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. Before you this evening is a request for direction concerning cost recovery on fire apparatus purchased between 1992 and 2006, in which the county made financial investment through the Capital Improvement Fund, but does not hold the title or the vehicles are co-titled. The request revolves around two main questions. One, is there a desire of the board to allow volunteer agencies to keep any funds derived from the sale of those apparatus? Or two, does the board want to look at options for cost recovery upon the sale of those apparatus? That's it in a nutshell.
And we have 4 options.
We have as many as we can come up with. Those were the 4 general first things that came to mind. Something, nothing, and other options.
Madam Chairman? Madam Chairman? Can I just give my opinion on this, or? Okay. I like option number 2. I think if the volunteers, if something is $100,000 and the volunteers put in 50 and we put in 50 and then it sells for 20 down the road, I'm just giving that as an example, I think we should each get 10. That's just my opinion, so I think that would be fair to everyone involved. And you have records of maintenance of everything too, right? So in other words...
We do have records of maintenance.
So any vehicle, yes, okay.
Well, remember, the volunteers paid for some maintenance before the county took it over on those vehicles.
That is
correct.
We would
Prior
have
to
that. We would have those
2010.
records, though, correct? So the volunteers paid for the maintenance on that. I mean,
Prior to
something-
2010 on those
Right.
vehicles.
Yes, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, it's number 2. That's option 2.
I'll
go ahead and make... I'll go
Wait,
ahead
hold
and-
on a second.
My feeling is that, be it 50/50 or whatever, the funds need to stay in the category. You know, if the volunteers take theirs and want to put it toward maintenance on their rooms or their equipment or whatever, but it still should stay in the department for use for what they serve to do. And my true feeling about this is, I don't think we should just do this. I think we should have a committee, and my first choice would be Mr. Forehand and Chief and volunteer, say, two of the chiefs of the volunteer groups, to sit down and write a policy and bring it back to us, because they should be involved in the decision. But if we're going to formalize a rough draft of a policy, it seems like we should sit down and do it together.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of just going into a policy. We have two fire chiefs here tonight that I think wanted to say something, and I think we had to at least hear from them if we're going to move forward. If we're not going to move forward tonight, I'm okay, but I think they're here, they should have an opportunity to say something on this.
Is that all right? Can we do that? Okay, I will be glad to call the fire chiefs up. Yes, Mr. Forehand.
Just want to get an offer a little bit of perspective. These are not high-value assets. They're, a lot of cases, they're 18, 20 years old, 25 years old. Even if we put in $200,000 20 years ago, we weren't paying people to respond on them for the majority of that apparatus's life. It was manned, maintained, washed, fueled up by the volunteers who obtained that money. It wasn't just given to them. They had to fundraise, sell stews, chicken, whatever they did to do that. So personally, again, y'all know my background. Not a lot of money that we're talking about, and I would be okay with giving them everything as long as it stays with station improvements or equipment for the vehicles, or T-shirts for the staff, or things like that go to the comfort and well-being of the volunteer station, apparatus, whatever it may be. And if we go that route, then they're getting the control of it. I think we can avoid the committee. We can make the decision tonight. And Chief Lottis, if you have a different perspective, I'm willing to hear it. It's just
not really a different perspective, but my point here is I didn't want to go down a path without figuring out where you guys want to go. If you kind of give me a direction, I will bring stuff, develop some stuff, bring it to the volunteers, get feedback from them, and then bring it back before you. But I didn't want to go down a path with the volunteers and solicit input if that wasn't the direction of the board. So we're in the early stages. If you give me a direction, I'll develop some policy, review it with everybody involved, and then come back with feedback, however you want.
Are we looking at most things 50-50 or the 80-30? What are we looking at?
Well, here's the thing. At the end of the day, I'm going to have to take the word
80-20?
of the people that are here on how much they paid for, because the county did not execute the check to the vendor. So I don't know what that is. It's $146,000 was fairly consistent over the years, especially in the early years. Cost of the apparatus is probably pretty close to, $220, $230, somewhere in that neighborhood.
But what's it worth now? So, what kind of money are we talking about? We talking about $10,000 a shot or what?
Well, I can give you Engine 5. Engine 5 is they found a buyer for that. That's $25,000. So you're going to get anywhere between $15,000 and maybe $75,000. I would think that's a reasonable range for what we are replacing.
And we could say, if we give the $25,000 back, like Mr. Forehand says, it had to be used for station improvements, new equipment. It couldn't be like a volunteer party and whatnot, right?
You could set categories or however you want to do that, or, they could come back and ask for those funds to be executed on a project. That's up to you guys. I don't have a feeling either way. That's why I'm here.
Oh, that's the easiest way
no
to do it,
guidance for this
Right,
issue.
I understand. You don't want to call with it. You need a policy to guide you by.
Exactly.
I understand. Gentlemen, who's back there? I see David.
And you got Arthur Hooley
I
from
see,
Bowling Green.
Whoever wants to speak, come on up since you're here. We normally don't do this, but because it's you, we'll let you do it. Plus, you look so nice. Thank you.
I've got some documents I can hand out to you guys if you want a copy of what we have here.
Just give them to Alan and take it.
And then I'm here speaking on behalf of Bowling Green Volunteer Fire Department on this topic right here, which was the discussion of the deposition of non-county-owned fire apparatus in which the county made a significant financial investment. So as a membership, and I'm speaking on behalf of Bowling Green Volunteer Fire Department, we would like to make the board aware of a few topics that are pertinent to this subject. We as a department, with the assistance of Caroline County, purchased a 1994 Pierce Lance pumper, which is known as Wagon 1 in the fleet. This truck served the citizens of the town and also served the citizens in the Caroline County for over 24 years, and it's still in service today. Countless hours have been spent by volunteers riding and staffing this unit for the citizens, and to summarize this, I put a little math figure in here. If you were to take 2 firefighters, which the county now provides as of September 17th for staffing on the engine, 40 hours a week, you get the total of 4,160 hours in a year. And then I put the math in there for the rest, for the salary. If we multiply this for 23 years of a combined total of $1.4 million that the county saved in not providing for career staffing. That was staffed by volunteers. Of course, it wasn't 24/7, but it was staffed for those first 23 years before we had career staffing on it. I can stand here and say these numbers, the volunteers have committed more than just those numbers that are put right there for 4,100 hours in a year over the course of the 23 years. We as an organization have spent funds to maintain, support, and buy equipment for this apparatus. It is correct that the county has invested funds in the support of this apparatus over the past few years for maintenance, insurance, and fuel costs. We are grateful for that, and we understand the investment that the county has had in this apparatus combined with us. We would like to bring up that the board, some of the expenses that were not at fault by volunteer membership over the last couple of years. Wagon 1 went out of service for the pump freezing, which was due to neglect of it being parked outside. There was damage also found to the tank at a later date. And then also the wagon was marked out of service for a major oil leak. It was then taken and driven down to the shop, and during that time it had engine damage that occurred, and that was a cost to replace that and get that unit back in service. It is in service today, and it is still serving the citizens of the county. And we're asking that if we could come to a conclusion, if the board would allow 100% of those funds to come back, that we are in cooperation to put those back and forth to the citizens of the county and make sure it goes to either equipment or to fund a portion of a new apparatus or whatever it may be to serve, or station upgrades, but I can't speak on the other departments. And then you'll find some other documents in there. One pertains to another topic tonight, and then there's another one that's off the record for tonight on the agenda, but we would like to maybe make a work session with the board and the chiefs of each individual department. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins?
Yes, I'm not as well prepared, but I will give you a case study. Old engine.
You don't look as nice either.
Well,
So,
thanks.
just so we're clear.
I came from work and got here just barely, so. The old engine 3, I've been trying to liquidate it for approximately a year now. It's 35 years old. Yeah. Used truck market at that age is not good. Number one. Number two, when that truck was bought, it was bought under what the county called the 50/50 program. They were going to provide 50% of the cost, which they provided $50,000. We paid the other $75,000 plus for it at the time, plus equipment. I don't know where the math for that came from. It wasn't from us, though. So, since I wasn't educated in Carolina, I won't mention where it might come from. But anyway, and I've got a second truck that's going to be coming up. It's going to be about the same case. It's going to be over the NFPA recommended life of 20 years front line. And unless you find a department somewhere that's real desperate or antique collector, it's just going to be a problem to liquidate. So in some ways, I can understand the chief wanting direction, and in some ways, if we liquidate him, he'll have one less headache.
Mr. Jenkins, you have no issue, though, with a policy that basically says the money goes back but stays in the system for equipment or
As
maintenance?
long as it stays within, is marked for the station equipment the truck came from initially, yes, that'd be no problem, because that's our intention would be to put it towards equipment or oil at the time.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. Appreciate it. I know how early you get up and go to work. All right, so I get the feeling that we're going to have Chief Loftus write up something for his manual or his policy guidebook and pass it by the volunteer chiefs and staff and bring it back to us, correct?
Right. A couple things that just want to touch on. Chief Jenkins made note. The way they're titled, we don't really have the ability to sell them. Right? So they would be sold by the volunteer agencies, and they would essentially keep those proceeds if you're looking at that. Again, we don't have the ability to sell it. They own the title on those issues. So I just want to bring that to your attention.
And you would just give them the directive that as of this date, it's off of our insurance, it's out of our fleet, it's off our insurance,
it's yours to dispose of.
If they decide to sit on it for a year waiting for a better buyer, that'll be at their discretion.
That's up to their discretion. And in some cases, at least with Engine 3, there are no county records that talk about how much money. So that's historical. We don't have anything, so I wouldn't pursue anything. There's no
I just don't want a dilapidated fire truck sitting behind a fire station.
You can park it at my
That's,
house.
The other issue would be co-titled vehicles, because the county does have a stake in ownership. Would you like to treat those in the same manner? There are a few of those as you get closer to 2006.
All right.
I can
All right.
write it up and, okay.
Very good. Thank you very much, Chief. And thank you all for being here tonight.
Madam Chairman, can we go back to agenda item 7? The mayor is here.
Is he here?
He is here. And we did get Sean Nelson on a three-way conference call and on my short break to figure this out. So we have the answers, but
All right, we are
I'm just
going
glad to
back
have the mayor
item-
here.
To item 6.
Or 6, I'm sorry.
6 under unfinished business. Thank you for rushing out.
No problem. I apologize for not being here. It's my son's 4th birthday, so I took the night off, kind of. But I found out real quick you never take the night off in public government. So,
Yeah. Welcome to the club.
no, I'm sorry for any confusion in this matter. The town manager and I myself met with Sean Nelson in regards to the 301 corridor, the public hearings that was hosted here and I believe in Port Royal, because we had some concerns with the potential closing of some of the crossovers without good input from the town or the county. And we were assured that those crossovers still are in consideration, but if we did not do something, then VDOT would make the decision on their own, but we still at this point have time to make decisions. What we've presented tonight is a letter from the town manager just asking for the framework of the Smart Scale project to be submitted to VDOT by June 1st. We do not have to pick any one of those projects at this point. So our plan would be to, we the town cannot submit this project to VDOT. It has to come through the county. So what we're asking is the framework in general just be submitted that we want to propose a project in that zone from the EP Hill Gate to the Bowling Green bypass. At that point, VDOT has in those handouts, you have several options. We plan to work with the county, work with the businesses in that area, and the public to have input, because there are some drastic changes to a couple of those crossovers if you look through that packet, such as closing Courthouse Lane except for to emergency traffic with only left turns out. There's other options that they've given us down the 301 corridor that could make that area safer for wagon wheel subdivision. They currently do not have a crossover directly across from their subdivision. So this gives us, and as you know, there's other economic development opportunities out in that area. Thanks to the county for submitting on our behalf the opportunity zone. We have some projects in the work for that area that could benefit for some different crossovers through there for better egress for that property along with the citizens of Wagon Wheel subdivision. So tonight is not about making decisions on on which crossovers to close, which ones we need to pick. It's just to establish the framework by June 1st, so we are considered for this project. And then in September, by September is what Sean was telling us, is when we have to come back with all the details of the project of how we want to do that. But if we don't have any input, then VDOT gets to make their own decisions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fincham, I know I have a question. On smart scale, the way I've always seen it at meetings is there is a project, such as the Carmel Church 104 exit. We're talking submitting for Bowling Green. I just want to make sure we do what they want, because they have those broken up all in different sections, but we can't put in multiple
No,
things.
it would be one application for all of the crossovers in that area. And Mr. Nelson confirmed that they could make an application that way.
Okay. And you know some of their designs, Jason, are terrible.
Yes.
Just so you know.
Yes, we were not happy with the way VDOT handled the input of that. We thought that they would come back to the localities before they went to the public hearings. That's why we called a separate meeting privately with VDOT, and we were assured that no decisions are final at this point, that they're all still, we still have decisions to be made. But from what I understand is it's kind of two projects out there that we would look at. Courthouse Lane crossover would be one, because that would be a major improvement there for safety purposes. And then the other section encompasses several crossovers, would be called a super street, I think, or super stretch there, where they plan out their crossovers for traffic control purposes.
As long as Mr. Fincham knows what you want in the grant, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, the town manager can work on that framework with Mr. Fincham on just getting the framework submitted, so that way, one, the money can come to Caroline, whether it's through the town, it's going to benefit everybody in this area.
But Mr. Satterwhite, you're aware that VDOT's plan for all of this was just a plan? None of it was actually financed?
We did not know that at the time that we met privately. We were under the impression that they were going to make changes. I personally was under the impression they were going to plan changes. When they were coming, I don't know, but when the decision was going to be made, I thought that's what that public hearing was about, was, hey, here's the VDOT recommendation. When the funds are available, this is what's going to happen. But it is not that at this point.
Air quotes, funds
Yes.
available?
Yes.
There was no funding for any of this. And that's, I believe Mrs. Long and I attended most of those meetings, and I was here at the one in Bowling Green, and there's no funds. But I hope what happens is you get this for economic development purposes, but the reality is they're not going to close anything because they don't have any money to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I hope that's the case too. And we do have some opportunities in that area that are close.
Mr. Fincham, do we understand what we're going to do? Because I know we typically turn in a project. Can you get with Sean and understand what we need to do?
Yes. In fact, Mr. Peck and I have discussed creating the access so that he can make the application on behalf of the town. Because it's under the county's auspices, but county staff doesn't necessarily have the time to take on and drafting and doing all the documentation for another project. So,
Okay.
I think the legislation is the towns have really no standing with
right,
VDOT.
it's a county.
Because the county did the Anderson Avenue expansion on behalf of the town.
Right. So I think we've got that covered. We're good with that.
Okay.
It's basically, we're authorizing the town to do a project. We are the application entity by state law. If the town was an independent city, they could make one on their own.
Correct. I understood that. Right.
And I assure you that we will do the legwork, we'll do the heavy lifting of it, and if there's anything that we need to run by Mr. Fincham or the county before we submit it, we'll definitely follow any rules that y'all do. We just would like the opportunity to submit for this project to get some funds.
What does this motion need to look like or sound like?
I would think it would need to be a motion to authorize the town to be able to apply under the county auspice for a smart-scale project on the corridor on 301.
So to apply for a smart-scale project. I'll make a motion that the town be authorized to apply under the county for a smart-scale project.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second by Mr. Thomas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Good luck to you. Thank you for coming out, please. Thank you. All right, that takes us down to 12, correct? We jumped around so much.
Members of the board, good evening. Last
evening.
time. Before you have a request replacing a vehicle for fire rescue. This will be in our logistics division. We're requesting the replacement of a 2007 Ford Crown Vic with 164,000 miles. Right now it has a pending repair on the ABS system and the brake tensioners, or seatbelt tensioners, excuse me. We would like to replace this. It was budgeted in fiscal year 2017. We rolled the funds to 2018 because we did not have significant repairs to justify that cost at the time. We would like to replace it with a 2018 vehicle, a pickup truck with a service body on the back, four-wheel drive. This vehicle would be used by the primary logistics captain as a secondary plow vehicle, as a primary tow vehicle. Supplies, logistics, and tools would be carried in that truck for him to do his work. Any questions?
The vehicle you're replacing is the one you used to plow during the last snow emergency?
No, that one's going to stay in the fleet.
Okay.
We're replacing the vehicle in our fleet right now that doesn't tow, can't carry supplies, can't carry tools.
This is a old sheriff's car?
Old sheriff's car.
Okay. Good presentation, Chief.
How many vehicles does your staff have access to, is I guess my first question.
The whole staff?
Well, I mean, how many vehicles are actually allocated to your logistics staff, I guess, is maybe the better way to
6.
put it.
They're in the packet.
Are any of them being driven home by part-time folks at night?
Part-time folks that live in the county, yes, because they have their personal tools in those vehicles, and they're subject to be on call.
They have their personal tools?
In those vehicles. Logistics makes repairs, both to equipment, trucks, buildings. They put their personal tools in those vehicles.
Am I the only one surprised? I mean, this is the first time I've heard this. I didn't know that we had part-time people with tools in trucks going, I had no idea.
Okay? They could easily park them at a fire station. Only one person lives in Sparta, parks his at his house.
So you have somebody with a vehicle who lives out of the county that parks it with their tools in it at a county facility and leaves it?
That's correct. That way it can be used by someone else.
But if he's part-time, how many days is that vehicle coming back into service?
It's a mix, depending on the work schedule of those people.
Just one person drive it, or is it shared?
Just one person driving it. But none of the, you can see the age of those vehicles. Most of those were acquired somehow other than being purchased new. And they're all with creeping up mileage. My point here is the person that works every day, that's the full-time logistics person, they would be getting that vehicle. Any old vehicles would be pushed down. If we had to replace another one of these vehicles, I'm not asking for those in the budget. I did ask for this one because I need another primary tow vehicle. We've been using Bowling Green's vehicle, which is an emergency vehicle, to tow some of our heavier trailers. In our CIP, when these vehicles go out, they are identified to be replaced by used vehicles.
These are all, in the list, Chief, these are all second and really third-hand vehicles.
That's
Because the
correct.
Crown Vic went to the sheriff, probably came from the schools after that. And the Parks and Rec van that we thought was dangerous is one of the vehicles he's using here.
They took all the seats out of it and using to haul stuff. I mean, we were hauling kids and older, older
Yeah,
adults and
but
stuff. So
we
had-
thought it wasn't safe to drive anymore, well, especially with kids in it. And now that's one
Kids
of
in
the,
it, that's true.
yeah, that's one of the vehicles that he's using here. The other is a surplus vehicle from public utilities. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with you driving these and leaving them somewhere, because if somebody stole it, they'd bring it back.
That this vehicle's going to stay at your office?
This vehicle stays with that full-time employee. That full-time employee takes it home. He's the primary on-call person. He has it, his vehicle now is a take-home vehicle.
Okay.
In the county.
In the county. No vehicle out of the county.
All right, any further discussion on this? Hearing none, do I have a motion? The motion is to authorize the purchase of the proposed fire and rescue. I'm going to find it. I really am. Hold on, will you just look
I got it.
for it? You got it?
I'll make a motion that we proceed with the purchase of a 2018 Chevy Silverado 3500 as a fire services logistics vehicle.
Is that going to be a dually or a single axle?
Single axle.
Okay.
Gasoline.
Second. Have a motion and a second.
We got
I'll second it. You need a second? She did.
I did. Y'all were asleep. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chief. We've done 13, so we're at 13, thank you, Clay. 13B, which is to discuss our date for our June meeting. Right now, we are scheduled to meet on June the 12th. Mr. Underwood would not be able to be here that day. Does the board wish to move or leave it on the 12th? The suggested date, if we were going to move it, would be the 19th. Does that conflict with anybody? Other than the fact that everybody's going to be getting ready for the fair.
Probably a good date. Fair's 20th.
There's 20th.
Well, we don't have a meeting in July, correct?
We have
I
one.
thought we got rid of the meeting in July.
We have the second meeting in July.
It's a two-meeting month.
What is our meeting in July?
We hadn't done the second meeting in July about 3 years.
Yeah.
It'll be the fourth Tuesday in July,
No,
right?
No, it's a
Tuesday.
second Tuesday.
So we're going to meet the 19th of June, and then the
Hold on,
10th, that's pretty much the same thing.
And the 10th of July. I mean, it's summer, and I guess that's what I'm driving at. Can we get rid of the 10th of July meeting?
When is your scheduled vacation, Mr. Barton?
July 22nd?
June.
Pam, would you please check?
Well, we
the
can't
He
have
calendar?
starts on the
Well,
22nd.
you can have it without me.
You can have it
Probably won't
without
wanna
him.
do
but
the
you
board
can't-
package.
You can't have a board packet if he's gone. Just want me to
Yeah,
go
we're
there.
not going to stress out Pam.
But we're meeting on the 19th. He leaves on the 22nd.
Yeah, we'd be all right. That's why I was making sure. I knew he was going sometime later.
Let me
in the
ask, could we ditch the whole month of July if we meet on the 19th of June?
Go to July? 6 weeks
But it's the middle of
We-
summer.
A number of years ago, it's probably 3, 4 before the new members joined, we didn't have a July meeting. We met sort of late in June, and beyond that, somebody had a conflict in August, and we moved the August meeting from the second Tuesday to the 4th. So we went from almost 2 months, but we didn't have any problem. So, I mean, it's doable, especially with summer vacations for everybody.
And that's what I'm looking at, is summer vacations. If we did one late, since we're going to move it to the 19th, we could just skip July. I mean, we could all just thank Mr. Underwood for
Now, wait a
moving it.
minute, we have 2 meetings in July.
We know we've
We
gotten rid of one.
already canceled one of them.
Well, you don't get away with canceling 2. We'll be here until 5 o'clock in the morning when we finally meet.
There's not that
No,
much.
the only issue is public hearing and
Depends
planning
on
and zoning action, so that could be the issue.
And if we really needed, to be honest with you, if we needed to have an extra one and added one to later on, I'd be fine with that. If it became that we had so much to do, like work sessions and stuff, I'd be okay with adding one later
I
on.
thought we had already done away with the 10th because of it being summer, but I did not know we were doing away with the 24th.
24th is the one we did away with. at January.
24th is the one we did away
Right.
with?
Second meeting.
Could we
Normally
look at
Mr.
doing this on the
normally Mr.
19th?
Black's on vacation.
And then look at getting rid of all of July as it gets closer, knowing what planning and zoning's got?
I'm okay with getting rid of
Mr. Fincham?
Any items we have are subject to the board accepting the planning commission's calendar for public hearings anyway. But we just make the applicants aware that it's going to be August before they have a public hearing.
Is there
But if
anything
we-
pending?
We have one item Thursday night, one public hearing Thursday night on a zoning case, or a special exception permit. But beyond that, there's nothing on the agenda for the June Planning Commission meeting. So you're not, and if you're okay, we could go ahead, if the Planning Commission acts and advertise this application for your June 19th board meeting, and then you don't have anything for July or even till August.
Yeah, as long as we're getting it up, we're not pushing businesses back. You know, we want people to
Right.
come to Caroline, we want to get these things moving, we don't want them sitting in your office for 3
Right,
months
you
because we
already
don't
have
wanna work.
you'll have one public hearing for June anyway, for the Love's Travel Plaza expansion. The item at Thursday night's planning commission, if they approve that, we could go ahead and advertise, or if they make a recommendation, we could go ahead and advertise that for your June 19th meeting as well, if you're okay with that.
I'm just not a fan of going 6 weeks. That's 6 weeks where we have no opportunity for the public to make a comment.
I agree.
If there's,
Okay.
I'm kind of interested in to hear, when we get closer to closing our books, closing the fiscal year, Mr. Finney promised that he would have on July 2nd, how much money we spent.
You just
So
about had it
That's
pass
fine.
out.
I'm just taking care of the planning and zoning part.
Understood. I mean,
That's more like that 80-30 math, because I know he didn't promise that.
80-30.
All right, so my understanding is we've already done away with the second meeting in July. So we only have one in July instead of 2. I would like to keep it. That's my feeling, just so things don't get backed up. And so the public has access to yell at us if they want to.
But we're going to be here on the 19th.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we move the meeting to the 19th, from the 12th of June to the 19th of June,
I'll second.
the 10th.
Make sure that gets.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to move the June 12th meeting to the 19th.
Me and Reggie.
Reggie. Yeah. All right, and then we're going to decide on the 19th about the 10th?
Yep.
How
Correct.
We're going to leave it? All right, thank you. All right. Informational calendars.
You got to do the
Oh.
vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Ben. Safe travels to you. All right, informational calendar, Mr.
Sorry, my agenda back up. I had a calendar up.
You've already already mentioned the ceremony Monday, location to be determined on, given the weather.
It's at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. And it says 11 in here, but it's at 10 for the Memorial Day celebration. Or if it's raining, somewhere else to be determined.
It'll either be town hall or here.
Maybe Jason could get his
Jason?
town hall for free since
need
the
town
county
hall.
Oh, yeah,
manager,
why don't you ask that
town
question?
manager wants us to pay $546 for the Veterans Day.
Plus $275 cleanup and a deposit.
I'm not sure of any of this that you're speaking of, but if you
Okay.
speak with me offline, I can work with y'all on that.
All right, we will do that. All right. See me after the meeting. All right, continue,
The loving marker,
which is June 2nd.
Saturday, June 2nd, here at 12:15, there will be a shuttle bus from Salem Baptist, correct? With a volunteer fireman driving it.
Mrs. Hall got Salem, I would like you, Mr. Cully, if you would ask the superintendent if he would offer his school bus as he offered before.
We
already have a bus.
I know we have Salem, but we're probably going to go back and forth in shuttle. Would you please ask?
We'll
him?
go ahead. Yes, sir. We'll ask tomorrow.
Do we have enough room down there to park 2 buses?
Nothing.
Well, see, the purpose is not to park the buses, it's to have them shuttle back and forth, so there's nobody parking. And I talked with the sheriff about, he's got a lane blocked, and
Did anybody know who we're expecting from out of town?
Do we have the governor?
we're still, I think Julie is, Ms. Langdon is still working on those, and if not, we'll have local people who are just as good, if not closer to the issue.
Just a curiosity.
And then we mentioned earlier that we moved our meeting to the 19th, and then the agricultural fair opens on the 20th, 20th through the 23rd. And on the 22nd at 10 a.m., it's a change of command at AP Hill. For those of you that,
Yeah.
2 years.
They've changed them back to 2 years from 3, which is terrible.
And you're on vacation?
And my normal pilgrimage, I can't get it out, but anyway, pilgrimage to Pennsylvania. Carlisle, all forward. Cars loaded up.
Say hello to Jim Thorpe.
Oh, yeah, when is, that's Friday, isn't it? Friday at 9, the demur hearing on Fox Spring is at Circuit Court.
Friday,
You wanted-
25th?
Friday,
No,
yeah.
this Friday.
This Friday, Friday the 25th, at 9 a.m.
9 to
I think I can do without that. I have a doctor's appointment. Yay.
Rather watch me?
It's sort of similar.
Exciting.
I'd rather give blood. All right.
That's it.
Is that it? Closing board comments. Mr. Thomas, do you have any comments? Thank you. Mr. Black?
No.
Mr. Seeley?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Underwood?
No, Madam Chair.
Ms. Forehand?
Just have a couple, I'm just kidding. I had none tonight, thank you.
And I have none other than to thank staff for hanging in with us. I thought this meeting was going to go faster, so appreciate it. Have a good evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. So moved. Thank you, guys. Be careful out there.